Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. It's the Age of Sigmar Monday show, which happens every Monday at 7 p.m. I'm joined by James and Dan. James, what up?
What up, Rob?
What up, James? What up? What up, buddy? And I'm also joined by Dan. What up, Dan?
Hello, I am three cats in a trench coat trying to get into a dirty movie, which I assume is just a movie probably about like milk or cream. I butchered the usually it's children in a trench coat. Somewhere the analogy got away from me.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Yeah. So hello everyone in the chat. Thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this back as a podcast, stay hydrated. And if you're watching this back on YouTube, then please do like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll hate you. So what we're going to be talking about
and comment
today,
something aggressive, just like, but not about this, but just aggressively comment something like, potatoes aren't a real vegetable. Just like anything, like pick a hill to die on that makes no sense and put it in the comments.
Yeah, this is the hill to die on show basically. Now, one of the things. So today's show is James and Dan and me are going to talk about the roadmap. I already covered this kind of in an earlier show, but it was in the day, and I didn't get a chance to talk to James about it or Dan. So I'm excited to see what they think about it and hear their thoughts. But in addition, I think it leads very organically into the conversation about our Battletomes books and generally that sort of stuff from Games Workshop, really worth the price point they sell it at. And like the TLDR, probably not. But instead of just being like, no, I really like to have like a really long thought out conversation with all of my friends about this. And I'd love to hear you guys have the chat and see what you think about it. Because I think it's one of those really interesting things that we all don't necessarily agree on exactly the right elements of what they are and what they will be. And Dan and James are like pretty great people to have in this. Dan's really conscious of new media, like works in a lot of film and TV, and James plays loads of board games and computer games as well as miniature games, probably a lot more than I do, so there's a more diverse kind of like experience of other game systems. So yeah, when he's not painting, he's going to be so ready to know all of it. I think.
Know. I can answer all of those questions right now.
All right, okay. What are you painting? Let's just start there.
Radagast the Brown.
Oh my God, perfect in every way.
They're all Radagast the Brown.
How many Radagast do you own?
Just one. Because you know what? Radagast is very expensive.
Versus Gandalf's?
Well, I have 5 Gandalfs, I think, now. One moved. Did I tell you?
No.
One of my Gandalfs moved. Do you know where he moved
house?
to?
Like, did he left?
He moved house, yeah.
He was just like, hey, you're not giving me enough time. I never see you. You're always sleepy when you get home because you're like, I work too much. Was it like you were just neglecting him? So he was like, I'm going to go stay with my cousin for a few weeks.
He moved to Japan.
What?
It's a long way to get out of a relationship.
I was on Twitter one day and someone was like, I'm after this very specific Gandalf model. I've had this same Gandalf model for like 7 years since I lived in the UK. Or maybe it was longer. It was a long time. It might have been since the first film. So like, 20 years? And he's traveled around the world and I now live in Japan and his staff's broke and I don't know where his staff bit's gone and now I don't know what to do. Does anyone have this Gandalf model? I was like, I think I have 5 of that Gandalf model. Because it's like the common one, like the Gandalf grey stick. And I went downstairs and looked in like one of the giant pots. I was like, oh, there's a Gandalf. Messaged some guy and was like, do you want this Gandalf? She's like, yeah, what do you want for it? And I was like, you can just pay whatever. I don't know what shipping to Japan is, like £3 for a tiny letter. So he moved to Japan.
Yeah, okay. That's incredible. Okay.
Which I thought was quite cool. Like when it got there, he sent me a photo and I was like, oh, Gandalf in Japan. He's sexier there too.
Gandalf on tour. Like, I don't want to. You know when you're having an argument on the internet and it's always just goes back to the Germans between the 1930s and 40s. Not saying the word. Or specifically some Germans. I sometimes wonder. Like, there's a really great film where the king of the Germans at the time comes back in the kind of noughties. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a pretty funny movie. But I would really like it if like Gandalf just came back to Earth now. Like, would Gandalf be on TikTok? You know.
Yes.
Oh yeah, he would, but it'd all be confused. Not his own,
but like the hobbits would have him on TikTok.
So he wouldn't be on it, but the hobbits would love TikTok.
Yeah.
No,
because they're not doing anything else.
Gandalf's a dilf. He'd absolutely get into it. Like, he'd be like, yo, welcome back to my channel. Now, today, we are going to be making the sun rise from the east with a whole bunch of horses, and here's how to get them all down a hill without any breaking of their legs. Like, it'd be like shit like that. He'd be like, make sure you like and subscribe. Like, he'd be great.
I don't know if that's true. I think he might just be super stoned at Coachella. Like, I think, or Burning Man.
Do you think he's Nathan?
Yeah, I think he went, oh my God, yes, now it's worked. Which actually brings us to why Nathan's not here today. Nathan is just coming back. He was in Venice at the weekend, which is nice. trying to fix a leak, I think, is why he was there. I'm not certain. He was like, he messaged me, went, it's so flooded, Rob. It's a nightmare. It's a real tough job. So, yeah.
The problem is that while they were fixing it, his professional job was to, like, he had to just put his finger in the bit that was leaking and just stand there because nobody else had that expertise. So he plugged the hole while they repaired it, I think, is probably how they did it.
Yeah. I also like the fact someone in the chat, Twitchy Terry, said, I always assumed he wouldn't be allowed in other countries.
Yes, you kind of get that vibe from him. You assume he's on a sort of like no-fly list. I
actually think it's the opposite. Like, he's considered royalty.
Well, no, I was thinking more like in an Armageddon-style situation. It feels like he's one of the 9 people they would fly up on the rocket to somehow mine the moon.
Yeah.
Armageddon.
Yeah.
Do you think he's Bruce Willis?
Maybe. Or no, he's the cowboy. Who's the guy who gets super high on oxygen and starts riding the nuclear missile? I think
God knows. It's him. There we go.
Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi is who I think he is. Yeah. Anyway, right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. James, catch us up. What you been up to? How you been?
Yep, I've been pretty good. What have I been up to? I've been up to no hobby. That's not. I did. I painted a bird this week, and now I'm painting a Radagast. But I had some of last week off, so I went to Brighton.
Nice.
For a night. And we went because someone that I happen to live with, that occasionally gets talked about on the show,
the Meg,
somehow convinced me that going to Brighton and getting a tattoo was a good idea.
Amazing.
What did you get?
Radagast the Brown as a tattoo.
No.
What did you?
We went to an artist that you may or may not have heard of. His name is Mr. Heggie.
Okay.
And he does, like, as he described it to me mid-tattoo, stupid cat tattoos.
What?
Show me what you got and where is it?
Well, it's literally on my chest here.
Tops off.
Yeah, tops off.
Probably not tops off, but I do have a photo, so let me find it. Because I also had to be shaved because I'm pretty furry. There you go. There he is. So let's see. Can we see my phone?
No, it doesn't love it.
James, I'm not gonna lie to you. They're not like high. They're not high art.
Whoa, but they're great. So I had an I Need Space corgi. So it's a little corgi in space.
Yeah.
And he says, I need space. I'll stick a photo on my Twitter in a bit.
Please do.
But for probably for the rest of the show, you should be tops off. I think you should.
It's pretty cold here in the UK, and heating's expensive.
Very
That's
expensive.
right. That's just gonna make the corgi look real tight, real strong, because it'll be
amazing. Okay, that sounds fun.
So we did that, and then I think that was probably it. That's probably the highlight of a week. It was a good old journey to go get stabbed by needles.
That sounds great. And have you been doing any hobby?
Well, I painted a bird for my Lord of the Rings event this weekend that I'm obviously ready for, and I'm painting Radagast now, who also has to be ready for the weekend.
Oh, really? Are you playing Lord of the Rings at the weekend?
Yeah.
Where?
At Warhammer World.
Oh, you're coming to Nottingham and not saying that? Oh, to be fair, I'll be in Boston, so that.
There you go.
Matter. Yeah, that doesn't matter. Okay, are you going to play? You play a Warhammer World. You can play a Lord of the Rings event. Is it a competitive tournament?
It is Throne of Skulls. I have played my list once.
That's okay. As a Throne of Skulls winner.
Oh,
just saying.
Hard flex.
Yeah, hard flex, but still a real flex. Yeah. as a Throne of Skulls winner, you mainly just get by. But it's a soft score event, just if anyone doesn't know, and it's mainly based on sports votes. So if you, James, just take loads of presents and give each person you play like loads of presents, and I reckon you might win the event. I think I went like 3-2. And I just flirted with everyone for
nice.
5
Maybe I'll
rounds.
just flirt with everyone. I'm probably better at that than Warhammer these days. But so I'm playing that, and the trophy is nice for the Lord of the Rings one. If no one's ever seen it, it's a giant one ring.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I have the Throne of Skulls one for Sigmar, because I came second once.
Congratulations.
So I'm going to do that. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm not like, it's funny, right? Because I've known for months, and I was like, I've only got to paint 6 models, and then my hobby painting mojo hasn't been amazing. So I'm a bit behind. I've just this one model to finish now, though. So
that's pretty good. All right, well, great, wonderful, lovely to hear it. Dan, how have you been? What have you been up to?
I just wanted to put out there that that there was a great suggestion in the chat that you should show him your tat to get those sports votes, but I'm gonna double down on it. Just actually cut out a piece of your shirt where the tattoo is.
Oh, like a
so
flap.
You can still wear a shirt. No, you just fully fucking cut it out like arseless chaps, but for your tattoo.
I mean, I normally wear a vest most of the time.
So a vest is already only like half a shirt. So if you cut out a little bit more, then you're fine.
There you go.
I honestly think you should get a flap like a butt, like the long johns, like a butt flap. But like just you unbutton 2 buttons and it just opens a kind of square chest on the front bit, and then you show the tattoo. Do that.
I reckon Dayton would know where I got one of those too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. In a heart, he probably has a small collection of them.
Yeah.
You need press stud tearaway clothing is what you need for this event, I think.
And small amount being like 15 pairs.
Yeah. Okay, right, Dan, how have you been? What have you been up to?
I'm good. I'm great. I actually, as soon as we finish this show, I have to pack a bag because I'm going home to Australia for the first time in 4 years to go visit all my friends and family that I haven't seen because I moved over here and then the Coco Vovo came and then work just never let me get away. So I'm super excited to head back to Australia for a good, almost 2 months. It's been way too long.
Yeah, we talked about this, right? And we talked about the fact that it's been so long, so that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Are you going to try and do any hobby when you're over there? Because a lot of you've got a lot of hobby friends over there, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'm very excited to see all the War Dolly Warriors. I'm going to take a small little capsule of stuff to paint, but then I've got a couple of armies over there that I just couldn't bring when I came, so I'm excited to start to kind of put them together. But other than that, it's been a mental week for work. Where the end of the year always is. It's crazy. It's insane because that's where things just go ballistic while you're trying to film everything we missed during the year, which so I'm very sorry to everybody that has messaged me or I was chatting to that I just dropped off the face of the earth. I just stopped existing for quite a while. I was like anyone that spoke to me, I was like movie film, and I wasn't a person. But now I feel human again, which is lovely. And last weekend, I will throw out a shout out to a couple of folks who usually lurk in the chat, Cool Bunny and Nemesis, because it was his birthday, and he hired a bunch of boo-hurt fighting knights to just beat the ever-living shit out of each other in their front yard, and then allowed me to run an illegal gambling racket on the outcomes of the night fighting like we were some kind of underground boxing ring.
Allegedly allowed you to. Not
allegedly
actually,
allowed me to. No, allegedly.
Exactly.
Allegedly.
I saw the videos. That looked hilarious. That was really fun. Didn't you even do dress up?
Oh yeah, everyone was dressed up as well. And the best part was that, look, the alleged gambling was fake money that were then exchanged for prizes, like we were in some kind of like carnival, it was like you were at a time zone or one of those arcade
LARP
things.
event, you could say.
Basically, except it was straight up. A dude broke his sword over the head of the helmet of one of the other guys. It was spectacular. And so heroes and villains fell and all of that. It was my favorite thing that I've done all year. I would absolutely love. So anyone else who's running a boo-hurt night fighty kind of event, if you need someone to run the gambling, I'll come do it and it'll be great. So that was wicked. That was great. If you're watching, Cody, thank you. And yeah, because you made me, you got me lots of prizes. So thank you, Cody.
Well, that sounds really fun. Have you had any opportunity? I know you were painting quite a lot recently, but with travel plans, I end up some stuff falls by the wayside. You happen to get any more painting done or not?
I have. I'm still working my way through the squats because I'm just really enjoying painting like hyper bright synth wavy squatty things. So my little cases, I literally have been like power painting to get everything to a level, like there's about 20 of them, to a level where I just need to do two layers, two edge highlights basically on all of them. So I only need to take like 20 models and 2 paints to just slowly work through, and then I'll probably buy whatever I need from there on. So yeah, it's good. I'm enjoying them. I can't wait to, when I get back, I'm probably going to dive into some Cities of Sigmar stuff. So it's a hobby renaissance at the moment, which is always the fun part of holidays for me.
Well, you might not do that once we're at the end of this conversation, but let's see.
Oh, sweet. But that's all right. I got Marvel Crisis Protocol. I got Legion. There's Star Wars Shatterpoint or whatever it's called.
Yeah, whatever that
out.
is. Yeah.
So excited.
Me the War Dollies. I don't care what they look like as long as they're plastic resin and I can paint them, roll some dice, and then scream, God damn it, just die, Yoda. Why won't you die? I've tried to snipe you so many times. You have been shot in the head and you just won't go down, you tiny green prick.
He's perfect.
As long as I get
How dare you? How dare you? I can't wait for the introduction of the because obviously when they've cycled through every Star Wars story ever, eventually we get the Lady Yoda franchise, which I'm super invested in. Yeah, she's sassy. Yeah. Is she a lawyer? Who knows? It's Lady Yoda. I'm looking forward.
She's actually a Force denier.
Yeah.
She's like
doesn't believe it exists.
She's like, no, I'm lifting this with my mind right now. And she's like, yeah, whatever you are, mate. Do you know how hard people try to get me in the sack? You with your little floaty rock isn't going to do it. And he's like,
All right, perfect.
Poor Yoda.
Okay, all right. So thanks everyone for joining us live in the chat. Just a big shout out. Thanks, Dan and James, for being here. Thanks to someone for resubscribing. I was away last weekend in Sweden. I was in Karlstad with the Malarkey boys, which is why we didn't do an AOS Monday show last week. I was getting my narrative gaming on, as they say. Played a 1,000-point tournament in Karlstad. It's pretty good. Had a great time. I made a lot of spawn. Not as many spawn I would have wanted, but more spawn than was probably okay to make. Roughly that amount of spawn.
How many spawn is too many spawn?
Who you asking, me or a regular person?
You first.
14.
Okay, regular person?
3.
Okay, so that was quite a lot more than a regular person would want.
Yeah, but I want a lot already. So, there's a certain point where I'm like, this is just a lot happening, and I don't need.
Do you have 14 spawn models?
I painted 9.
Okay.
That's a lot. You can statistically generate, with one list I was running, 20 in a game. So if none of them die, then your quid's in. But normally they die.
Because they're 5 wounds on a 6-up save?
5 up save.
Oh, what? Oh, I guess
I'm
always right.
They got +1 save. Yeah.
And then all out defense.
Yeah. They got the life.
It's obviously worth it on a spawn, right?
Yeah. They got a life expectancy of an American kid in a school. Second time I've used that joke today, and it's just fucking great. Anyway,
no.
Second time I've used that.
Probably too soon.
It's always too soon. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's too problem. Yeah, they don't have long. They're not long for this world. Whenever they get summoned, but I absolutely love spawns, and they're the best. So I played that. That was fun. We had. It's never too soon. Agreed. We had a lovely time. And then I'm away next weekend in America. I am on Friday. Going to be doing a painting seminar at the Everwinter GT. I think there are still tickets available. I think we've only sold 380 tickets, so maybe 20 more tickets available. Not sure.
Okay, wait. There's something we need to address now that you're getting to this stage, Rob.
Yeah.
You know how like different fans of things, they have a fan name or like a team name for everybody does it. You know, Critical Role has critters, like everybody's got their thing.
Yeah.
Are you going to call people who do the slap chop slappers?
obviously.
So can you say that you have
Slat
380?
slat chaps, and slut chops.
And yeah, so basically you have 380 slap chats and slut chops.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it might be in the vicinity of 380 tickets sold. So last 20 tickets on sale right now. If anyone, I think you go to the Everwinter GT, and then get on with it, and then you can sign up. Yeah,
That's an important question.
Oh, okay. What is the question?
So we've done this show quite a long time now.
We have, yes, correct, yes.
And I'm not sure we've ever had 380 paying people in the channel. So does that mean that you're more of a painting streamer than you are a rules streamer?
Yes. This is
good. That was it. That was good.
Would you like me to regale you with a gut punch moment from my friend Mr. Owen the Jackson?
Yeah, do it.
We travelled over to the Netherlands, where the Dutch live, earlier in the year. Me and Mr. Colonel Cabbage and Owen the Jackson, and we set up. But there was a problem with the internet, so we were doing 4 tables of live coverage of Age of Sigmar simultaneously, while also recording the games, and also in addition. Doing it from equipment we brought over in literally suitcases. So pretty impressive. A mobile studio is what some people would call it, I guess. We set up, we deployed. I wasn't very well. I had a bit of a cold. And then the internet wasn't working. I couldn't figure out why or what was the problem. Eventually got it all working that night. Then in the morning, having slept very little and worked furiously hard the day before to do something which I don't think anyone else in the world has even attempted, and now is common for me to do very regularly. Owen looked at me and said, "Wow, you've added the ability to do this thing and bring up these graphics." I have. He's like, "Oh, you've worked really hard on this." I was like, "Thank you." He's like, "Must make you feel really sad that you're only known for painting." I've thought about that for months.
So how is being a painting streamer?
I haven't. Honestly, shit. They
you know what the best part is? Is just the wonderful amount of venom that people just arbitrarily have for it, which is just it's like Slapchop is sitting there. Also, Mr. Berry, the Slappening, wonderful name, truly wonderful name for what's happening. But all these people being like, "Oh, Slapchop is just whatever they say." Effectively, Slapchop is just there in the background, being like, "Your fury makes me stronger." No matter what happens, they're just powering it up.
It's just Zenithor highlight in there, right?
It's actually not, because that's actually a light from a particular source. Whereas this is actually adding sketch values technically. But that's fine.
All of that. No, nothing.
Yeah, that's why it's super fine that everyone who just called it Zenithor was wrong and an actual moron.
But if you have that many people coming, right, to do the painting class, can you do something? Start a cult. When you're there, just be like, "Welcome. I am now going to pass down to you what was passed down to me by the Turkish monks." And then be like, "Now the first thing we all must do is raise your right hand and be like, I swear I will never call it underpainting." And just start a small cult. That'd be so cool. I'd love to be in a cult.
Do you know what you should do?
Are we in a cult? Isn't the Honest Wargamer already a cult? It's been accused of being a cult.
Do you know what you should do?
Sub-cult.
You should just wear a really big hat.
Yeah.
As big as you can find. Maybe like the Pope. That's like a good size.
Yeah.
And then serve Kool-Aid. Doesn't have to be poison.
Before we begin, we almost drink the ceremonial Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And then just see the person who drinks it first. They're the biggest fan.
They're the biggest. No, straight away. No, didn't even ask. Just
to them.
Next it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Listen.
Whole bowl.
Anyway,
gone.
Gone. So I'll be doing a painting seminar, but I'll also be playing in the tournament. This is important.
No.
Are you playing what you paint in the seminar? You have to paint it to play it?
No.
Have
That
the
is a
Colt
great
pet your
idea.
army.
I think
Have
because
the Colt pet your army. You don't have to take one. You just get everyone.
we
to
haven't
take,
sold
here's- everyone
380
gets a
tickets, Dan. I reckon we've sold one ticket. I don't imagine literally anyone's fucking going. Like, it's actually kind of embarrassing. I have to, like, prepare really hard in case 3 people turn up, but I also don't want to prepare that hard because only 3 people are turning up. I'm in a very difficult and awkward position, if
Do you
I'm
know
honest.
how many people are turning up?
No people are turning up. At best, 3 comedy ticket purchases. Like, they're like, this will be funny. And then I'll have to be funny. But I'm not a stand-up comedian. So I'm actually been put into this incredibly awkward position, and I don't really know what to do about it, if I'm honest. So,
Someone in the chat's got a ticket.
Wiggles in the chat, lol, I bought a ticket. Fuck me. Fuck.
So that's one person. So now you've got to work. Wiggles, would you like to be on the show after, and you can do a full review?
100%. Can we please get some live?
We'll just have a week
tweeted
where we don't have
reveal?
Rob, and we'll just have a review of Rob's thing. And if there's 380 people, it'll be a real busy show, and we'll just leave Nathan in charge and go.
Okay, please don't come to. No one come to. Wiggles, try and request a refund if that's possible. Right, but I will be trying anyway. So then I'll also be playing. I'll also be playing at the event, and then the Rice Krispies treat represent the wet palette you'll never need to use because of the skills we use, but also because the paint water Kool-Aid was poisoned. I mean, make sure to paint your hand to show you're an actual painter. Yes, okay. So awkward. I might just start riffing, do some stand-up. Who knows? Anyway, I'm also playing at the event, the final bit before we get onto the actual subject we'll talk about today. And I had to I'm writing my list, and honestly, boys, it's a challenge right now because I don't know if you know, new Slave to Darkness are out, new STDs, as they say. 2022, the new STDs have turned up. There are no tickets, just sign up for the event. Oh no! Right, so then there's new STDs, and they're in play at the event, and they're going to be a drama. I don't know if you know loads about the new Slave to Darkness, but they are going to be very difficult to deal with. And then also the new ogres are going to be there as well. So they're also allowed in play. And I don't know if about anything about those, but they've got loads of guns. And my guys, Dan, as an Australian, you'll understand this a lot. If you do happen to see a bin chicken or even a flying turkey vulture, I know that Thanksgiving was just this weekend, but I reckon loads of those Americans who do have a small love of guns are going to be all over my chicken like, don't say it, a kid in a school.
I mean, I think the problem is that GW really recognized a market. Now, I'm not saying that all ogres are rednecks, but I'm not saying that. And so then they went, what do we got? We've got a large army of just hyper masculine gun, like hyper masculine, being like, oh, what are we? We're muscles and we're meat and we like to eat and drink and fart and shit and stuff. They were like, okay, we've got that army. And they're like, how do we sell this? How do we sell this to Americans? And then they went, make guns great again. And that's why. So I imagine, actually, let's jump on the US Games Workshop web store and see how many of them are sold out. Because I have a feeling that it's like just going to be all of them, right? Like anything with a gun is just always gone.
In the US, that's true. Yes,
Yeah.
Mogor. Yeah, make ogre guns awesome again or something. Yeah, I agree. I think that they might be hillbillies. I think ogres might be hillbillies. And going to America with my bin chickens, I do have to prepare myself against... I almost was like, oh, should I take dragons? Because I've got the 3D printed dragons. Do I, do a different fun little list and have some fun? But I think I've settled on a little Zinchi list. I think I've tried to work out, because I want to take my list, but that's one of the really big problems you have when you're facing a new meta in Age of Sigmar or in any game. You're like, oh, my army's okay. And then they're like, well, this is the direct problem that you can face. Someone can shoot all of your fellas. And you're like, uh-oh, that's a real problem. And so, like, this weekend I happened to play, because I played this weekend at the TSN Arena, and we have some really good terrain rules, in my opinion. So I was able to hide my bin chicken behind some line of sight blocking terrain, which is pretty cool because I faced against 3 iron blasters. But even then, I felt really hemmed in by the fact that I couldn't just like be in the middle of the board, if that makes sense. Like a good example would be, Dan, right now, if you had 4 iron blasters and I had a mega boss or more crusher, more than likely you just take your toy off for no reason. Like it just doesn't get to live. It just dies.
You just keeps it honest. It's great.
Yeah. So like it just dies. Like it's not like, oh, I wonder if I'll put it in the corner, it's dead. Put it in the middle, it's dead. Put it on the side, also dead. Wherever you put it, dead. And that's a bit of a problem in the kind of meta. So I've written myself a little different list, and I won't lie, features a lot of pink horrors, James. You're going to be really happy.
Nice. The best lads.
The
Hello
best
there.
lads. What?
Okay, can I...
That's what they say when they split.
Yeah,
Hello there.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Hello there.
A lot of times.
Okay, so let me run you through this. This is what is currently out of stock from the More Tribes range.
Okay.
The Tyrant has a gun.
True. Yes, that's great.
Man-eaters have guns.
Do have guns. That's great.
Lead belchers possess guns. Iron blasters have guns. Noblars have throw shit at you, but like still have guns. So effectively, anything that's the only person who has a gun that isn't out of stock right now is the Blood Pelt Hunter. Shock horror.
Blood Pelt Hunter's got 2 guns.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's shot, but it's a crossbow, not a gun. It's a crossbow, not a gun.
Oh,
no one wants it.
Okay. Oh, he's got a spear and a gun. I think he's got
in England.
I think he's got a spear and a crossbow.
Yeah, it's not a gun. He's only in a bow crime place. And I would also like to point out, as is being said in the chat, that if you talk about poultries and guns, my people are predisposed to lose wars against things like emus, because we did lose the Great Emu War of Australia. I would also like to point out that we have cassowaries, which are genetically evolved from raptors. They have a lockable talon that they use to puncture, and they can hear the blood pressure of your heart pumping, so they know where to stab. They are knife-wielding birds that can hear your weakness. Okay? It's understandable that you would lose against such, that's not a turkey, that's
Dan.
a death chicken.
Okay, Dan, you go back to Australia.
Sorry,
you guys all
birds are scary. Birds are scary.
I understand. I get it.
Don't fuck with birds.
Anyway, so I'm at an event at the weekend as well. So, and obviously, I don't want to do. Thanks, George Hammer, for resubscribing. I don't want to do myself a disservice. I don't want to go over to the US and be like, "Oh, the lad off the telly has been rubbish." So I've gone and got myself. So I've written myself the best list I think I can write myself. But I did have to and ah several times today. Couldn't quite decide what I wanted to do because I need to shut down the guns on the very first turn. Otherwise, the guns kill me. And that's actually quite a challenging thing because I don't know if you know this, they're protected by the Noblars. So actually writing lists that do that is actually really, really challenging. So I don't know what everyone else has done. Winlaw, who went to his very first event of the weekend, said, that's exactly what happened to me. They aimed and I lifted up all my units and they just died. So, it's going to be a very new meta in Age of Sigmar. So some of the things that did previously work aren't going to work anymore. So anyway, so was it an event? Played at an event this weekend, going to an event next weekend, all very different. Painting Seminar, 3 people. We're caught up to date with all the news and info. I think, if everyone's happy with that. Yeah?
Nice.
Happy with that? Good. I can't wait to scoop up my entire army at turn 1, all 5 games. There won't be that many ogres, but also maybe there will. I'm not sure.
There won't be that many because they're all sold out. That's why it's fine. You can't get them, so you're safe.
I think I know that there are at least 4 full Iron Blaster armies at the event, which is...
And the only question you have to ask, are they good guys with guns or are they bad guys with guns?
They're all good guys. They're playing ogres, so it's fine.
They're true.
Naturally good guys. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, all right, so... let's get on to the kind of main subject. I guess it's the news, but also the main subject of today's show. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the Battletome roadmap for 2022-2023. Now, the first thing, this is a little bit of old news because this is when they did the preview. First bit, Beasts of Chaos and Glue Spike Gits are getting new books. Dan, kick me off. How do you feel about these 2 guys getting new books?
Both very exciting. Beasts of Chaos are just a fun army. I'm excited for them to maybe hopefully get a little bit more of their own feel and theme. Like they've been some interesting things, but I don't know. I'm excited for them. And Gloomspite Gitz, I just, like the what Skaven kind of used to be, where it was madness and insanity, and truly it was like 50-50, like the Jezzails might pop you in the head, but they might blow up and kill themselves. Like there was more randomness and insanity to Skaven. That's what I love about the Gloomspite books. So I'm very excited to see it, where it's like, hey, he takes a mushroom. Maybe he turns into a swirling death machine, or maybe he just rolls onto his back, vomits and pees himself, and then just sits there staring at the sky. Like I'm excited for hopefully randomness and absurdity, because I don't think anyone playing Gitz should be if they're playing for structured reliability.
Okay, no, that's fair. I think that's a super fair point. James, how do you feel about Beast of Chaos and Gloomspite Gitz on the horizon? You're a Beast of Chaos fan, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the armies I have left. Yeah, I'd like to see a Beast of Chaos army that isn't Dragon Ogres.
Yes.
Like, I'd like to see an army of goats. Like, not Zangors, none of them running around, like actual goats having a great day out. And like maybe more narrative than it's been, because obviously they're like a bestial herd. So it'd be cool to see that kind of like craziness come from it. But what I'd like to see more than anything, I think, is like the beast. What's his name? The little hero lad. Beast Warrior? Beast Lord. Like, can he be a lord? Or can we just call him slightly better Vestigor? Because he's been rubbish.
Yes.
Since the last two books, I think.
Actually you raise a really good point. I think you raise a really good point, James, actually. Sorry, I just naturally pressed the wrong button there. I think you raise a really good point. One of the things that we lack a lot in HC, my personal opinion, and I don't know about anyone else in the chat thinks, but we miss like that duelist character. Like a vampire lord is really just a graveguard with a couple of extra attacks. Like, a Beast Lord, as James pointed out, is not even as good as probably a Chosen is. Like one Chosen from like Slaves to Darkness. So like, it's not they're not the Lords are not really that great, but that's also true.
Well, yeah, like there's that interesting thing, right, where they have that like title, and if we ignore real life, like if you go like medieval, I guess, like. A lord was like a person who commanded an army and blah blah blah, and maybe they weren't that fighty, but they probably did a bunch of jousting and such. It'd be like, and in a hero-y, gamey fantasy world, normally they're like a person of renown. And I always think like every time I ever would get that book out, like the Beast Lord model, albeit old, is still kind of cool. Like he's kind of stood on them rocks. I know he's a fine cast boy, but like he's got them twin axes. He's kind of on a stone. His hair looks like it's or fur, whatever. Looks like it's blowing in the wind. And then you like read his war scroll and you're like, oh, he literally all he wants to do is duff up heroes. Like he gets a buff if he duffs up heroes. Maybe not anymore or soon. Like, if he ducks up a hero, like, he screams and everyone fights better. And then you're like, oh, how's he killing a hero?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it would be nice to just see them, like, slap. And he doesn't even have to have a good defense. Just let him slap. Be like, what does this guy do? Like, fights a unit, 5 attacks, rubbish. Fights a hero, 50 dice. 3s -1, but there's just a million of them.
It's like in the chat, Mr. Berry talking about the old school Blenderfoot vampires, and even if you think about Flesh Eater Courts, the Abhorrent Arch region wasn't necessarily a super blender in combat, but had a decent number of attacks and could chunk. Was a good caster and had a great summoning ability. So was a foot hero that was strong. Like everyone took it for that summoning, for that like little push for the magic. And so it's like, well, yeah, like there is an example of a foot hero that is really, really cool, like a cool usable foot hero. And when you see the Beast Lords from the last little while, there is no reason to use them really, because they're not great. You know, like they don't excel anywhere that something else doesn't excel at better than them. So I'm not saying that every foot hero needs to absolutely carve up, but when you go, it's a beast lord, and you're like, okay, so his one thing is combat, and then you're like, how is he in combat? And you're like, I mean, like, he's kind of as good as Core from some other armies. You're like, oh, rad, okay, yeah, cool.
I agree. So James, really nice point about the Beast Lord, and I think that's actually true in many of these Battletomes. I think it's one of the things that they've done a really, really poor job of expressing in Age of Sigmar as a rule set. Like, even then, I was just thinking, I love the idea of maybe like, at the end of the combat phase, if one of the lords are slain on a 2+, they come back to life on D3 wounds because they're a lord, like it's their like last rally, and that could just be a generic rule for like insert /lord character. I'm not talking about Lariel, I'm not talking about Archeon, I'm just talking about a Chiffin Beast Lord, or even could I interest you in a Grot Lord or something. It's just a little bit. They just don't do a particularly good job, in my opinion, of doing those, especially, as James says, especially Dan says, sorry, melee-based characters, because like they either give them some sort of like buff, and you do not want it to be like 40k. 40k is the worst example, where they're like, are you a lord? Everything 6 inches gets reroll once to hit. And you're like, copy-paste across the entire of the game system. Embarrassing, and the worst. Yeah, there's loads of characters that could really do with it. Maybe I'll be traveling back next Monday, so next Monday show won't be on either. But maybe the Monday after, we could maybe try and talk through some of those characters, because that'd be really fun. I'd really like that. Yeah. So Jacob in the chat is pointing out some ones that he thinks are good ones. Grimwrath, Sigvald, Gotrek, Light of Eltharion, Megaboss on foot are all kind of like very fighty foot characters. But the rest of them are a bit like, and there's some others that stand out as well. But sure. All right, cool. So there are 2 new Battletomes. First thing to look at, I guess, is that the Gloomspite Gits cover is the same artwork on the front. I'm very excited about both books. I think both books are actually really interesting because they're both very, very, very old books that are quite different and also quite similar. They've got this really nice thing that they have along with Skaven. If you take OCR Bone Reapers is a very complete book, if you know what I mean. And what I mean by that is like they've got a catapult, cavalry, infantry, elite units, hero, wizard, on-foot character, monster dude. You're done. We got all your boys. Whereas Gits is like, you got your Trogs, you got your Spiders, you got your Gits, and then you've gone and got like your Squigs, and they're different enough that they could almost be 4 books themselves, and they definitely, like Skaven and like Beastmen to a degree, they could be their own little factions inside of a thing. But in the last version of Age of Sigmar, they didn't get any sub-faction rules, and they didn't get anything like that. So I'm quite nervous about the Gloomspite Gits book, because I'm really hoping that they've spent loads of time thinking about all the different sub-factions, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then
just to give it flavor, like I think that's one of the things I miss, is that some books hit it and some books just totally shit the bed. The sub-factions creating flavor inside of army list design. You know, like, you remember what you used to see, like, depending on the sub-faction, like, very much swung what you saw in the army. Now sub-factions are more, in some books, are literally just, what are the best additional buffs I can give my units? Like, what's, like, rather than like, being like, remember the first Beast of Chaos book where it was like, you had the Slanesh thing and it was this and it pushed them all in one direction, or the Tzeentch and it pushed them? I'd really like to see sub-factions across the board, like, nailing that.
Yeah, me too. And then similarly with Beast of Chaos, you've got war herds. Then you've got your goats, your regular low-level goats, up to, and then you've got your big minotaurs in the big the Bulgor and everything else, and they're almost 2 separate factions. So we were discussing that there's 2 new books on the horizon, is what we were discussing, and hopefully that they do good service to both those 2 books. But actually, I guess that kind of brings us on to the main topic of today's show, effectively, and what I really wanted to talk about. And what I really wanted to talk about was our Battletomes, and in fact, our books from Games Workshop, worth it. And I guess there's we could do an old, what do you mean by R? What do you mean by Battletomes or books? What do you mean by worth? And what do you mean by it? But we're not doing that, yeah? We're not going that deep into it.
What do you mean? I want to know what you mean by it.
Yes. Yeah.
It is important to me.
How dare you not expose the secrets of it?
Yes. The real question is, are the books that we buy from Games Workshop worth it? And actually, that's kind of the main point. I reckon Age of Sigmar 3 has been one of the better versions of Age of Sigmar that we've had so far. But I would say the very worst thing that we've had from Age of Sigmar has been the books. I think that they've been low to poor quality, and also that they've had, it feels like not that much effort put into them. That isn't to say that I haven't enjoyed what many of the books are. But when they're sold at the high price point, and I guess by worth, I'm talking about the money that we pay for them, because we're able to get them quite cheaply because they're readily available online for free, but they are not. If we buy them from Games Workshop. So I wanted to kind of have a conversation about it, before we did anything else. James, what do you think about the Battletomes specifically? Start there.
I think my first key point, which I've made for God knows how long now, is that it still irates me that there is no digital option.
It's fair.
And that's just personally that I would prefer a digital option. So pre this edition, if I wanted a book, I basically got to the point of just buying the digital ones. The handbooks before this one, I had them all digital in the end. And I think one of my biggest complaints since this edition, it is this edition, right, that the change went back to physical books only, is that that's one of my core complaints. I don't want a physical book because I don't want to own a physical book anymore, especially when I know it's going in the bin at some point. I don't collect them, I don't save them. I find the narrative is pretty much the same from one book to the next. The narrative hasn't changed, in my opinion, enough like it did in old fantasy days for me to give a damn about buying a new book for the narrative. I guess there's an interesting flex for me, and Rob alluded to it earlier, but I'll play a lot of other game systems and computer games, and so I have this weird rule. So if I'm buying a computer game, because I guess that's easier to timestamp, that what I'll normally do is look at a game's price. So let's say for ease it's 30 quid, because that's the price we're talking about. And normally what I'll look at is, if I'm looking at a game, I'm like, is this good enough? Is this game gonna give me probably 30 hours of play? Which means for every pound I spend, I get an hour out of it. And so that's how I'll normally look at that if I'm buying a computer game. And there's occasions where I'm like, I really want this. It doesn't matter. And I'm sure in Age of Sigmar that would happen, where someone would be like, oh, I absolutely love Flesh Eater Courts, I'm buying the book, whatever, but might then be like, oh, I'd like to start a Skaven army. Can I be bothered to buy this book? Am I going to play the army enough? And I guess it's a weird relative thing. But for me, when I buy things, I get a bit as an adult, I will cost ratio it in my head. And I'm like, for 30 quid, do I get 30 hours out? If it's closed, does it matter? No. If I really enjoy it, does it matter?
Yeah.
And all of those are... Well, carry on.
Yeah, no, they're all really solid points. I think I'd like to expand into each one of those as we go through them, because I think initially the financial value is a super fair point to I think we can break all of these down into individual elements, because I think while I think this conversation isn't going to affect or change sales in any way, shape or form, a lot of the conversation is around a cultural thing that we all take part in, and actually what we spend our money on. I think none of us are likely to spend any less money on the hobby that we enjoy and love, and I'm not advocating for that. I just think that maybe there might be smarter ways to spend your money, and also maybe I've got the wrong end of the stick, because I think there's some interesting kind of points to be made as well on that. Dan, first off, like, what are your first thoughts on this subject?
My first thoughts is to compare it to gaming, right? So let me compare this to like video gaming, right? And I'll throw it to the chat. How many people still buy hard copies of the video games they buy? Like, how many people go into a store, buy a disc, put it in and install? Because I would say that we are now at a point where most people, like the majority, and when I say the majority, I mean 51% or more, buy their stuff through Steam, through Epic Game Store, through online, because it's a better way to possess them. Right there in the chat, like you spend your money on games so that they exist on Steam, they exist on your whatever, so you have them no matter what. I personally, I love it. I love like having like all of the editions and things like that. It was great, but it's just not practical. And the thing is, look at how many, if anyone in the chat who has Steam, I bet if you go to your Steam right now and go through, there is just lists of games that you have never played, but you just bought on a whim, or you played for a little while and you're like, oh, I'll get back to it. Oh, I'll play that.
My Steam library's over 1,000.
What?
Yeah, right. Anyway, but my point being, right, that you buy them because they're there and you want to have them and you're like, well, I have this in my thing. When there were digital books, every time a book came out, I bought it. I just bought it and I had it because I didn't even need to think about it, right? Like, it was just easy. Now when physical books come out, I'm literally like, I don't need it. Like, instead of buying every single digital book, I buy maybe 1 to 2 books an edition. And like, yes, obviously, like as Rogver is saying, like, Steam has sales and things like that as well, which obviously helps. But I just think that the more you get away from digital, I think the more you're going to start hamstringing the amount of money you can make. Because, yeah, I just think it doesn't work as good. Even if they offered it inside of their own app, as much as that would be frustrating that it would be, like, locked to their own device, if I could buy them and possess them, I would in a heartbeat, because I'd much rather have them digitally than 100 physical copy books.
Okay, so interesting you both brought up like the physical versus digital conversation. I think that's a really like a really salient point. And I think what's interesting is like the immediate conversation is that they seem more worth it to both of you if they're digitally available and like able to be like digitally like accessed. It's quite an interesting point, because I guess in some ways you're like really paying for the utility of those digital like uses, right? Like that's one of the things that you both discuss in. I'm going to read what some of the people in the chat have said, and then we'll start breaking them down into elements, right? Charles the Dead Lizard thinks that Law Read the current books is a joke. The rule updates should be actually free and feel like a damn money milking practice. All this hardcover premium is nuts. People are going to trash the book's next edition anyway. I think that's a great point. Like, we should talk about that. We should, before we talk about anything else, we should talk about limited edition books. I get that we all want limited edition books, because you almost want to be, I'm the biggest stan for this faction. I think that's the feeling I get when I think I want the digital book, not the digital book, sorry, the premium book. I want to be like, I'm so this faction, I've got the fancy cover of the book. But it doesn't even include different story or art or rules, like,
or a model.
Just a cover.
It's just
a different cover.
Like, but I get the feeling.
There's a bookmark, isn't there?
Is there?
Isn't there like that cloth bookmark, or is that gone?
I don't think so. I think that's gone.
Oh.
And they're like, and the advertising is okay. So there's 2 things I want to put out there. One of which really fucking upsets me. The first one doesn't upset me too much, but they're always like, it's a soft touch cover. And I'm like, why? Why does the physical touch cover of your book mean anything?
I would never touch a hard touch cover book, Dan. Are you out your damn mind? As soon as I get a book, if it's a hard touch cover book, I cover it in carpet.
Now, I have one other like major thing and Games Workshop is as guilty of this as anything else, right? As many other companies. But the word bespoke is not to be used by companies mass producing products. You don't get to say it is a bespoke soft touch cover. It is a bespoke rule set. Fuck right off. Everybody send dictionaries to Games Workshop. Like, just take a dictionary or just buy it on Amazon and put Games Workshop as the delivery address, and then like ask if they can just highlight the fucking word bespoke when they send it. None of the things you make are bespoke.
Not
it's what is bespoke might be someone's custom paint job, but that book is not bespoke. That book is poke. It is bourbesse, or whatever part of that word is the opposite of what that word. Mail them dictionaries. Everybody send them a fucking dictionary, because that's what I've moved off of my upset of just as X as ever, like just as deadly as ever, just as angry as ever, just as poisonous as ever, whatever the fuck. I've moved off that. Now I hate bespoke. Fuck off bespoke.
Okay, yeah, well, bespoke answer, Dan. Appreciate it. Love that. I think where we were at before this, though, is that like the premium books feel insane. The latest Slaves to Darkness book did have a bookmark, apparently, so that's great news for bookmark fans out there. Like, I'm sure. Go on, James. Sorry.
Just like a weird question, right?
Yeah.
And this probably more to the chat, because I feel like us talking about our limited edition copies of books is probably a miss. Other than I did have the original Lumineth one.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. You have the original Lumineth Realm Lords one, and since then,
well, I don't anymore.
Of course, they've had 3 new books.
Yeah,
like 3. So, like, how do you feel like having bought into that initially?
It's such a weird one, right? Because now what they seem to do is be like, here's a limited edition book, but it comes with a load of stuff.
Right, okay.
Like, it doesn't, it's not on its own. It's in a box of stuff. But the box of stuff is cheaper than what you would pay for the box of stuff. And, for a little bit, it's the only way you get the stuff.
Yeah.
Which is almost like weird loot box, but you know what you get.
Yeah, that's true.
It is like the loot box, but you know what's in it. But it's kind of cheaper, but probably don't want all of it. And weirdly, like, I've not been playing at all recently, but like, I'm in Twitter.
But you are playing in December.
But I am playing in December.
Yeah.
But I think, interestingly for me, like, I have seen a lot of like on various platforms, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Oh, here's some Imperial Guard and some cards and some dice. Didn't want the other stuff. Oh, here's the Imperial Guard book and cards. Only wanted the models. And I'm like, so what we're doing is this weird secondhand resellers market, because you wanted toys but not the book, and then we're selling someone the book at like RRP, but it's got a soft cover. Like there's like weird contingencies to like those books now and how they sell them, and I think maybe they realized that telling us they were bespoke, exciting books wasn't the only way to sell them, and doing what they do with single models, where they're like, buy this box, it's cheaper, but it's not cheaper because everything cost us 50p, and we invalidate the rules quite quick. But you are selling like a bigger product.
Yeah. Okay.
Like there's a weird flex to those limited books. You get nothing but a cover. And where I wanted to go with this originally, I've gone on a weird tangent, is like, even when I had the Lumineth one, the couple of times that I used it, and other people in the chat might be different, but I got the limited edition book and I tossed it in my bag that I'd toss any book that I was using in, and I went to an event and it rattled around along with my dice and my measures and my tape measure and whatever else. And then I got to the event and I got it out and I folded it on the 2 pages I needed, and then I finished that game and I tossed it back in my bag. And like, I didn't treat it any better, because it's not really limited. It's a book I need, so I've got to take it.
Yeah.
And if I'm not taking it, I'm photocopying the pages or taking a photo on my phone or acquiring a PDF to take to events, and that seems pointless because I've bought a book which I then leave at home. So like, I'm taking this book to events, so I've either got to buy 2 books, limited and standard, or use the book. And really, do I think that book is ever going to hold value? And maybe, because I'm very sorry, chat, and all Warhammer fans, but Warhammer is a weird, obsessive hobby sometimes.
No,
And
that's
some of
it's super fair.
goes up.
Like it's super fair.
Without you.
Like there's a lot of people like who like I mean the group of people who we are not talking about are people who are book collectors. If you're like I'm a book collector, guess what? This conversation is not about you, and stop listening because you're a book collector. Listen to a book show.
Or
yeah?
no, listen to this and just sit there being like, those filthy gaming plebs, like because you just get to hear about our pain.
Yeah, okay. But like what I also don't want the conversation to be, if possible, is kind of like an attack on business practice or anything else. I mainly just want to talk about like what's in it, right? And what's around it and for us as players. So like for book collectors, they're just going to buy the books. It doesn't matter. Just ignore them. They're forever. They're nothing. And James, your point about it being like a limited edition book that you then don't treat well is kind of true as well. But also, it's a fairly impractical thing to lug around in addition to an army. My personal opinion.
Especially when, like, arguably, you should be taking a rule book, a general's handbook, now the freaking battle whatever for that season, and then your army book. Like, you need to bring a small library with yourself. And like, look at the success of a bunch of other games and things like that, and companies like Amazon that just went, we're going to make things accessible and easy. And people went, I would like you to have my money. Like, ease has value. And so, like, if you said, hey, here's all your books and they're digital and they're on your phone, so you don't need to take 8 kilograms of book every time you want to play a game, people would be like, have my money. I would like that.
So follow-up question really quickly for the chat and for you two. Would you purchase a book if it was like A5 sized? So the ones we currently buy are A4. So we're talking about a quarter of the size. And especially if it wasn't hardback, if it was like a softback. You know, just imagine the size of like a novel book.
So is that General's Handbook?
The smaller.
That's pretty small.
Smaller.
Okay.
But like a General's Handbook or smaller, would you pick that up?
Yeah, I would, but also if it was just game. You know, like split Battletomes into 2 books. Give me a little rules like handouty thing with a PDF code, and then have a big law book or something like that. But ultimately, I would rather have my stuff digital.
Okay, James, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm probably with, like, I don't want a book. Like I spend a lot of my life, like, doing stuff, like, probably as an adult and as a person who likes to try and be socially conscious. Like, I do a load of stuff, like, weirdly, like an adult, like recycling. And like, not in my current job, but in my former job, like I helped run an eco thing where we like went and dredged canals, and it was physically disgusting. And I think then being in a hobby that I know gets talked about a load, and you're like, well, there's a lot of plastic waste, to then be like, oh, also now I'm going to go and buy a book. Like, let's ignore all of the cost implications, but I'm buying something that I know is either having to be recycled or go to landfill based on whatever it's made out of. And actually, like, the core message for anyone that's going to like recycle or whatever is like, if you don't need it, don't do it. So when it was digital, I never even questioned it. I was like, do I like this more or less? Well, it, like, fine, well, either way. Like, I preferred the digital long term, but when I first ported over it, probably not. But actually, for me, it was like, short term, do I want to buy something that I know is going in the bin? No. So I think if there was a smaller book option, I would prefer it to a big book, just for carrying and for my back if I went to an event. But but again, if there was a digital option, I would opt for digital over physical.
Okay.
Personally.
All right, interesting. This become like the kind of main points for you guys, but yeah, like so. Okay, so you guys talked about kind of like the value of it being something digital. We've also talked about the front covers. So one of the things that's actually also true is that they've at least copy and pasted one bit of artwork for the front cover. So if you're a book collector, then you would even be in this place where you're like, oh, it's even the same front cover. Like, what the hell? This is a bit awkward for me. Thanks, Collaroo, for resubscribing. There's some really good points being made in the chat as well. I'd like to read out, if you don't mind, specifically from Winlaw. And one of those things was that he's really new to the hobby, so he's excited about picking up a new book. Really excited about picking up a new book. I'm trying to find the comment right now, but he was basically like, "I'm new. I like picking up the new books because it's just really exciting for me because I don't really know what's in it." So let's kind of leave the conversation about being digital or not digital to the side for a moment, and let's more just discuss the content, because I think that that's one of those things that's really important. Because over James, a good example would be the Lumineth Realm Lords book versus the Gits book. It's been nearly 4 years since we had a Gits updated book, or 3 years since I've updated Gits book. You would assume, and we know there are a few new minis as well, while there are new rules, which is really fun, you would assume that we're going to get some brand new lore. Okay, and then we're also going to get maybe some new artwork and some pictures, and then we're going to get the rules. So I guess those are all, and there's also, so let's just be clear about what is in a Battletome. I think that's a nice thing to kind of set us up with. You have the lore, like the whole history of the faction, but you don't have things like designers' notes. You don't have background writers discussing why they created something that way, or maybe where there are nods to something in the future. We then get artwork, but again, we don't really get any discussion about, there's no interviews with artists or anything like that about what the art might represent or what it's meant to show. There's not even a breakdown in those pages of what those things are. Then we have narrative campaign section, like a rules section. So we have the narrative campaign rules, and we also have the match play rules, and obviously they coalesce together in a lot of ways, because you can't actually play the narrative campaign without the kind of war scrolls and other bits which you need for match play. So they're in there as well. And then sometimes you have painting guides and other things in. So the things you do miss are generally kind of behind the scenes stuff, which is kind of one of those interesting things.
But I would say, though, to jump in there, that from when I started playing to now, they are much more an army book. It's more lore and rules, and a lot of that hobby element, the design. I remember books used to have it wasn't just a few pages of painting examples of the different factions, sub-factions within a book. It was pages of full-on, I'm even thinking the original KO book. Back then, they still had full painting guides, step by step, through painting models and things like that. There was even pages where they'd have a few basic conversions that you could do inside of the kits that are in there. It was things like that, and I absolutely do miss that. I miss that element where it used to be. But that's, everyone's different. That's a personal opinion thing, though. That's not me being they're worse, because I know some people are I like that I have my game book and I can go elsewhere for the other stuff. But the hobby element of the hobby isn't so much in those books anymore, which I do miss. And the other thing I just want to jump on while people are talking about the codes don't give you a code for a digital PDF. You can't then if I've got the code for,
this is when you buy the physical book, you get a code for
you get a code. But for example, the squats, the Leagues of Votan, when I put that code in, it doesn't give me a PDF of the book I can take with me. It just unlocks me my ability to view all the rules in the app when I'm building an army. It doesn't I can't then scroll through a PDF of that somewhere. Just to be super clear about what those codes are.
Yeah. Go on, James.
Well, I had a thought, and then Carnivorous Kang in the chat made me think about it even more. So I was thinking, when I was a kid, I got in High Elf vs. Goblins, which is, I think, 3rd edition, as a youth. And I was pretty young. And one of the things I remember, adamantly throughout my entire life is that in that box set was a battle bestiary. So I remember that book?
Yeah.
And it had a griffin on the front. So in my box there wasn't there was some rules for the goblins, if memory serves me right, and some rules for the elves, and a core rule book. But then there was a battle bestiary, which was a big book. I think it was blue, with an old high fantasy griffin picture on. And then it basically was just a book filled with all of the monsters in the world. So it'd be here's a griffin. Here's a picture of the griffin. This is what a griffin is. This is what a griffin does in the game. It was not even rules. Like, it wasn't like their war scroll. It was just like all this cool narrative about a world that I knew nothing about as a kid. And I remember, like, throughout my life, I would, oh, there we go. There
it was
is.
released, James, just so you know, in 1992. The cover artist was Mark Gibbons, and I did unfortunately just lose. There you go. Yeah, it was done. It was the 4th edition cover. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, please
I was
continue.
I own it. It's still in my loft.
Oh, really?
And occasionally, like, over the years, probably not in a several, but I would, like, get it out a nose because it's super cool. And it's probably not even worth anything. So if you see one at a car boot, just have a nose, pick it up. Like, it was so good. You'd read it, it'd tell you about the monsters. And it's like, I don't know, 100 pages maybe, but it was super cool and super narrative. And then, like,
yeah, it had in it, just so you know, the contents. It was about the Warhammer world, the threat of chaos, the map of the old world, men, dwarfs, trolls, high elves, halflings, orcs and goblins, chaos, dragons, dark elves, giants, skaven, ogres, undead monsters, wood elves, index, and then a profile summary, just so you know.
Yeah, so there you go. So it was like a core book for everything, but it gave you some narrative, some rules, some lore, like super amazing. And as a kid, I remember, like, being enthralled by it because I'd just, like, read it. And then, like, 2 weeks later, be like, I could read that again. Like, what was a griffin? Oh, I'll go back. But the army books at that point kind of was similar. Like, I've got, I think, most of the old dwarf ones for the various editions I played, and the narrative had changed. And it was Carnivorous Kang that triggered me. Like, all the dwarf ones at the back had, like, every rune.
This is what I was about to say. Yeah.
And what every rune meant. And, like, if I'm competitive, do I care? Probably not. But, like, that's cool. Like,
can I just point out that, like, I think I've been trying desperately on the show for years, and I'd like us all to be really conscious as an audience, but also as creators, to just never really identify competitive people as not being also, in addition, narrative people. There's a lot of people on the internet who generally tend to, like, put people in a camp, but they're like, that's all you are. Like, and I just don't think that's true. Like, I very much, I like winning at tournaments, James, and I like playing my armies really hard, but I also thought the runes were cool. Very much like you did.
Sorry.
Yeah, no,
so I guess
it's not you. I just think it's always really good to just always expand on the point whenever we get the opportunity to, as creators.
Yeah, so I guess my point is, like, if you're not interested, that's dead weight, right? And you don't need it. But if you are, then it was, like, just super cool. And I remember, like, even as a kid when I probably painted, like, absolute hot garbage, like, trying to freehand paint, like, I don't know, the rune of armor on shields. Horrifically, but, like, that's cool to have. And then years later, like, I pick those models back up and be like, what the hell is that? And then find a book and be like, oh, it was this because I knew this existed because of this.
Sometimes a couple of those runes are so fucking rad you get them tattooed on your arm.
There you go. There we go.
Like,
yes.
But I think, like, lots I feel like ever since we've had Age of Sigmar, the narrative has struggled to keep the pace of the game as well as the narrative developed in Warhammer Fantasy. And maybe it's because I've paid less attention to it, but it is also maybe because I feel the characters are, like, named characters are less, maybe.
So I got a question for the chat. Just picking up my Maggotkin of Nurgle book. So just to give you some sort of indication of what we might be discussing a little bit, and I think James is on the money in a lot of ways. So this is my Maggotkin of Nurgle book. It's 104 pages. Okay, it's 104 pages, and the rules start at page 58. Okay, so half of this book straight off of the bat is rules. Half. Okay, and then there's a little bit of a painting guide for 2 pages, and then just some literal pictures of the units which you could buy, which honestly I feel is page filler, but, like, you know, maybe. So, like, if we skip past those pages, pictures of units, which is just pictures of units, and we start at 39. There are 40 pages, and there's obviously some double spreads of, like, rules as well. The narrative really starts on page 4. And then there's a bunch of pictures, and it ends on page 39. Okay? So it's not a lot. I mean, the Maggotkin Nurgle book isn't a particularly, like, heady roster anyway, as an example. But I feel like what we're discussing now is that...
Those painting guide pages, though,
Yeah.
What do they actually say? Like what constitutes 2 pages of painting guide?
Oh, okay. That's a great question, actually. Having never looked at it in my life up until now.
But and the thing is, though, for many people that doesn't matter. But I mean, I'd actually genuinely be interested. There's a good chunk of people.
It's how to paint rust in one section, how to do green skin in another, how to do grey skin, how to do details, I guess, plague swords and armor. But Games Workshop do a great job of doing either 2 versions. Like for painting, they do have 2 like ways of accessing their universe, right? They have YouTube videos or Facebook videos for painting tutorials, and they also have Warhammer Plus for more advanced stuff.
Yeah.
So they do, like, you don't necessarily need that to be included in here because they have different vehicles for producing that information for you, which I think like are better. But my point is, I guess a question off James's point, because this is really a conversation, is there value here? Is, do you ever feel inspired by the new Battletomes? Do you think that the 40 pages of lore here is inspirational as maybe Warhammer Fantasy Battle, like kind of codexes as they were back in the day? I feel like what they don't do is universe build as well as they could. I think they universe build a bit, but they don't universe build loads. What do you think, James?
Sorry.
Go on, James.
I honestly don't think they universe build at all anymore, or almost none. And like, I was always a big Go Trek fan, so old world to new world, and I've had or listened to, because I think I audiobooked them all, actually, the new ones. Like, I think they're incredible, and I really enjoyed all of them. Really well written, really well read, big fan. And I have read some of the other stuff, and I think it's really good. Like, I even had the Cursed City book, and I thought that was pretty good, to be fair. But I have every Stormcast book. So the first one, the Dracoth one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one. I think that's where we're at. 4 Stormcast books with the Dracoth one.
Maybe 5.
Right. Maybe 5. Whatever. I have them all. But I think, like, really interestingly, right, for me, the actual main narrative has not hugely changed. It was kind of like, oh, lads from heaven, come down. The second one was like, oh, lads from heaven, souls kind of getting corrupted. Starts to get a kind of cooler bit about it. Third book, kind of souls are getting corrupted, but now there's these new lads and they got some new armor. Oh, and do you remember that Celestin Prime who's welding Gamma as well? Nothing's really changed with him. He's still the same. But there's also now this other huge guy who's like an absolute badass. His name's Bastian Cathalos, and he's in charge of the faction that you thought someone else was in charge of. But we haven't really explained why he's in charge of it. He's just here now. Oh, and there's this girl that's a super hunter. She's really cool. All the monsters are scared of her. She brings guys back to life. She's really cool. How much narrative do you need on her? We'll give you a paragraph. Here's the rules. And like, when that came out, I was like, I love that model. Like, Andrasta, sorry for anyone that doesn't know. I think that model's super cool. I love the Bastian Cathalos model. I think that's super cool. But my whole attachment to them and the entire world and their army and their narrative is in a £30 book that is probably narratively 75% reprint. And for them, maybe 3 paragraphs. That's like, here's a super amazing character that's so important you can have one of them, and we gave them a name.
Yeah, I think.
How much do you want to know about him? Here's a paragraph.
I think. Can I just make a point here before we move any further? Like, so if you go onto YouTube and you type in 40K, Bosh, get ready. You're about to be gut punched by 40K lore videos. You're about to be taken out to the cleaners and having your head kicked in by like just a swath of lads who are like, do you want to know about 40K? Like, and they're going to tell you, and they're going to go into intense detail. And that's because, sure, it's built on 30 years worth of background, way broader than Age of Sigmar, I grant you. But it doesn't feel like a good example would be like I've just started to get into Necromunda. Don't talk about it. It feels like that there's like an almost imperceptibly deep amount of lore when it comes to this side game that is Necromunda, which is effectively one city,
on one planet.
One planet in this mega universe. Like, I really feel like James points out, the main faction doesn't even still to this point have like this kind of like real like conversation about what's going on with the lore. And they just forget about stuff. Like they were like the Sacrosanct Chamber. You're like, amazing. That was by the way Age of Sigmar 2 Stormcast, and then they did new Stormcast, and they were like, literally don't talk about the Sacrosanct Chamber
ever again.
Doesn't matter.
The Sacrosanct Chamber were literally made by Sigmar because their souls were dying every time they were reborn.
Yeah.
What are they doing now?
Yeah,
They're still doing that?
Yeah.
Are they busy? Is that why they're crap in this book?
They got new armor, and I love the idea that it's like, did you just put Liberators in new armor? It's like, nah, these are new guys. You're like, what? You did what? Anyway, but I just super quickly wanted to jump because there's a couple of people in the chat who said, like, put in things that for me really keyed into what I think is missing from a lot of Battletomes these days. And correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone's there. Wiggles said they were inspired by the first edition KO book to do Barak Mornar, even though the examples weren't legal matched play. I remember that as well because they'd have little off stories about all the different ones, and there was a great one from Mornar, who I'll never be able to pronounce your name, still wants to build a dwarf miner army after reading fiction about a fight between Ironbreakers and Globadiers where the fight was in silence because everyone needed to hold their breath because there was so much gas in the tunnels. I would say and I think that's what I miss now. I feel like, so I'm going to compare it to Tyranids and Votan. I know they're 40k, but they're the most recent books I've read cover to cover. And while they have a lot of cool lore, those little asides and stories and battles and things like that, just the way those are written feels different to me. Because I remember, and I think I'm guessing a lot of people would too, you'll read a little side something. It'll only be a few paragraphs, but that will inspire your idea. That'll inspire what you want to do. And it used to be that it was just enough to whet your appetite to be like, oh, that excites me, that interests me. And then if you're flipping through the book and you're like, say you read a thing about Barak Mornar and you're like, that's really cool. Then you get to the section on Barak Mornar and you're like, huh. And then you see some painting stuff for him. You're being hit with a lot of ideas to inspire you to build, paint, and play your army in one area. And I don't think you get hit by that as much anymore. Like, and I know that people might disagree in that, but I think there's less versatility, there's less expanse, and it's more like very bang, 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 bang. Here is the lore, here is the facts, here is the data, so you know and can appreciate it all. But there's maybe a little bit less innovation in new and ridiculous things.
Okay, also, let's talk about a couple of things here, because number one, I guess first question to the chat and also people who are watching the video up from this point is, do you think the lore has got better or worse? Do you think the lore is good enough, or would you like to see more for the money that you pay? You're paying £30. The thing is a Battletome is kind of a broad church, right? They're like, it's rules, some of the money. It's pictures, some more of the money. It's art, some more of the money. It's narrative campaign, some of the money. So you kind of get this kind of like, you may only want a bit of it, but you got to pay for the whole package, right? It's bundled up together, very much like the FOMO boxes of what James was talking about earlier. But I guess if we're talking about just the lore, do we think that the lore is enough for what it is? My personal opinion, that I think that it really should be truly expansive. There should be like some big, weird character dives, but also, why would you put the effort in when you're like, as an example, they're going to do the LRL book, but they know on the schedule that they're going to do 4 more in the next, or 3 more, whatever it is, in the next like year and a half. So why would you make a considerable effort to rewrite that every time? Like, as a business, number one, because that's what they are, but also as a creator, if you're like, right, chop and change, add a couple of cool stories to the Lumineth bit, change pages 7 and 12, swap them around, and off you go. So, sorry, just one quick, Dan. They don't necessarily assign the resources, is kind of my point. So, what I'd like to do is just say, like, that I think that they could be better, and what I'd like to leave the narrative section of the kind of conversation on is that what I would love to see from Battletomes, specifically Battletomes, is I would like to see crazy big books. Does anyone remember the End Times books?
Yep.
Okay, so if you're new to Age of Sigmar and you don't remember, they produce these kind of 5 massive books for the end times, or if you would like to go and look up something called Tamrakhan or even Monstrous Arcanum, they were these huge narrative, almost like D&D level, like campaign, big, thick, crazy books, and they were jam-packed, weren't they, Dan? They were jam-packed with stuff.
With everything.
Yeah.
They tickled, and the best thing that they did, which is actually was perfectly put by a couple of people in the chat. Wiggles said, nowadays they say Mornar is pirates, where previously there'd be a big ass story about Mornar doing stuff and how they operate and do things, and you do still get some of that. But what End Times was perfect for was show me, don't tell me. You know, like they didn't say, oh, I broke up with my partner and it was really sad. They actually show you the heartbreak of the breakup. You know, like they show you are in there witnessing, reading the story through the stories, through the lore, through the gameplay, through everything, rather than just being told Marathi is angry and has done a magic.
Yeah, so just to be really clear, because guys brought it up in the chat, like we're having this conversation as if we don't actually know some information, but we do know that at the very maximum they have 2 to 3 lore writers, and and their jobs is to do everything. You know, like the new book's coming out, they're going to add some little bits here and there. You know, there's a new version of the game coming out, like because that'll be 2020. They'll already be writing that probably. There might be some expansion books. They'll already be writing that. So, you know, there's a new faction or whatever, they might be writing that. There's new units, they'll be writing that. So that's a lot for 2 or 3 people to be working through in a year. But that's, again, not on those as creators. My love to them, and thanks for making stuff as good as you can. It's really on the business as resource, like, providers. But that's kind of a here or there. Like, ultimately, I'm more talking about what I want from my hobby. And I want them to go deeper. If they were like, bump, this is a bestiary for Lumineth, get fucking super weird, yeah, oof. I would be, do you know what I mean? I'd be so into that.
Oh, yeah.
That would be wicked.
Well, it's... Votan is a perfect example where they've got a blank slate to create lore effectively from scratch. You know, they took some inspiration from some of the old stuff. Wonderful book. Truly, like, when you read, and that's what, if I had a wish list for Age of Sigmar, that's what I'd want. I don't want new books. Give me a new race. Not just elves from a different place. Give me an entirely new species, an entirely new race, or bring one back from the damned or the dead. Because that book is a breath of fresh air. And I think that when they can just cut loose and be like, what about this? What about this? What about this? It's awesome, and I'd really like to see that for Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, someone's just said, imagine, because we've been battling in the realm of Gur, right, for this GHB, well, since Age of Sigmar 3 started. Why don't we have a bestiary of Gur?
Yeah.
Like, that's a book you can sell me. That's a book I'll whistle a hearty tune as I walk into a Games Workshop store and pick up a... Go on, James.
Well, I just think... But you don't even need a bestiary of Gur, do you? You need, like, Book of Gur. Like, what towns are there? What do the people look like? What do they eat for food?
There is a city on the back of a giant worm. And during the Age of Chaos, it was invaded by Skaven, who, when they were forced out of the city, get this, went into the worm. And so once a year, they have what they call, like, I think it's like the blood hunt, where the worm grows and its scales open. So they send entire armies of men and dwarves and elves into the worm's flesh to hunt out the Skaven to try and stop them from killing the worm that their city lives on the back of. That is some spectacular lore that exists in one book. And it's like, and I think it only exists in the Spear Grung book. I can't remember what it was called.
Boys, we sound like twats. Dan, I love that story, by the way. Yeah. There was a bestiary for Thondia, yeah, or for this area, but it was inside the Thondia box, which was the Terrain and the Crunchspine Incarnate, and it cost £130.
Okay, but what's in it?
Well, none of us have it, so...
Someone in the chat must have it.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat bought that box. Tell me what's in that bestiary. How many pages is it?
The book was available separately. Oh my God, look at us. We've learned that there's some lore out there available. Oh my God, amazing. It's £25.
Is it good?
Is it good?
Season of War Thondia, is that the book?
I'm going to go buy it. I'm going to go buy it. £25. You can have my money. Let's go see it. Product description. You're too busy printing Cronspines. That's true. I was too busy printing Cronspines. That's true. Was it not a book for the box? I have the box, but not the book.
Apparently it wasn't in the box. It wasn't in the £130 box.
It wasn't in the box. It was a separate book.
Separate book.
No.
So it's... Okay,
Someone
wait.
send me the book.
There's a handful of pages of... So it is 122 pages looking at the thing.
Oh, my God. Amazing. Okay, all right, we're in.
There's...
all lore.
No.
Or is it this Seasons of War Thondia?
Yes.
Yes. So basically, half up to page 36 is lore, and then it's rules from 52 onwards, by the looks of things.
Oh my God, so exciting. Okay, great. All right,
okay.
love this. Okay, great.
So Path to Glory battle pack.
Wait, hold on. It's only
Anvil-
30 pages of lore.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for 30 pages, isn't it?
And then a lot of War Scroll battalions, battle plans, grand strategies, battle tactics, battle plan, battle plan, battle plan, battle plan, battle plan.
Okay. All right. I might whistle less because £25 for 30 pages is probably not going to get me. If I'm honest.
Do you remember that? Someone asked about mating rituals. That was a good point of lockdown.
Mating
Should bring that back.
Of the what was it? It was a corn beastie, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. Anyway. All right. So let's talk about like pucker up. I'm not doing it. I'm not like if it was a whole lore book, but I'm not buying the book no one even knew existed until 5 minutes ago book. Yeah. I'm not doing
Apparently
it.
people knew. That's even more embarrassing. How did these people know?
What, that this existed?
It's
I think
because they own...
some people bought a £130 terrain box for a broken model, is what I think you'll find they did.
Because I'll tell you what happened. They picked it up, they read the 30 pages of lore once, they either didn't read the rules if they don't care about it, or they skipped through the rules to figure out what they needed to know for tournament games, and then they forgot they owned the book until you just brought it up.
Right.
Yes. I bet a lot of people are like, oh, I've got that. I might do it. I bought it for the train. Haven't built my Cronspine yet. Wow.
The one person in the world, Wiggles. You are the one person in the world who's like, yeah, I did the terrain, but the Cronspine's still on sprue. You're like power to you. However many billion people in the world, you're the one that didn't do that. So that's good.
Oh, okay. Hold on. It's okay. I've just bought the book. Give me a second. I've just digitally bought the book. Okay.
Oh, it's good that they released a digital edition.
It's so good that there's a digital edition available for us to look at. Hold on. So let's see if it looks like a bestiary. James, while I'm showing the chat the bestiary very quickly, could you...
I love this. It's like, it exists. Wow, that's great. I'm going to get it. And then it's probably not that good. And it's like, fuck it, commit, get it.
Can you see if you can find the
original bestiary?
No, well, the original bestiary, or like something like the Warhammer Fantasy Battle bestiary, like the Tamrakhan, or like something else. So I managed to find a digital bestiary. Thank you very much. So you can see it here. So Thondia. So this is good. So let's go have a look. We'll start on page 7. That's just a picture. Page 8, we get the narrative, so we get to get into it. This is cool. Okay, no, it just describes the core book. Okay, so that's...
I love that.
Dan, the way you said it was 30 pages of lore, but it actually starts at page 10.
I was about to say the one of the first pages in the book has been like, hey, have you considered buying this other, bigger, more expensive book? Like, that's the start of it. It's just like, hey, like, it's like you know when you go to YouTube and they make you watch 2 unskippable ads before you can watch whatever you're actually about to watch? That's it.
Okay, so page 1 is a whole page of text. Page page 2 is 75% a picture of Kragnos and a bit of text. Page 3 is, I'm going to say, 50% text, 50% a picture. Page 4, we get full text. Page 5, full text. I love that. Page 6, 40% text. I'm just going to put that out there. Then we get some pictures and maps, which is great. I love a map, which is fun. And then we get some like little notes and stuff. And then a full map and a bit of text.
How many times has that map been used?
Yeah. So they're like, God damn it, we paid for the Incarnate year subscription and we will get our money out of this.
I wonder how well this sold.
For those who understand the Incarnate reference, you're a fucking legend.
Well, it says somewhere at the front, like, the beginnings of, doesn't it? The start of.
Yes.
One of many books. We'll see. We'll see how well it sold if more come.
Yeah, one of many books. And then we get into...
Season of Thondia is the first in a series of books that chronicle the ongoing struggle in the mortal realms. Part lore source book, part story, and part rules expansion.
Okay. All right. Okay. And he's 30. Okay, so now, do you know what's exciting about this versus a battle tome? Yeah? I think that this is more interesting than a battle tome, in my personal opinion. I don't know what anyone else thinks. By the way, this is nothing like a bestiary. Like, I would say. Like, I guess it does. It has, like, a description of what Fellwater Troggoths are and stuff. Like, but, okay.
You know what it feels like? It feels like, remember, like, Blood in the Badlands from Warhammer Fantasy? It feels more like a campaign book. You know, like here is a story. Here is how you can play a campaign.
Just because I've gone down to page 51-ish on it.
Yeah.
There is some nice sketched pictures of the monsters.
Yeah, like a Jabberslide and a
bit of story
Flathorn,
about
which
it.
doesn't exist as a model.
That's pretty good. But it is... How many pages? Well, the last picture's just a bloody other picture. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's like 8 pages.
Okay.
So what's the? Did you go up to your loft to get the bestiary, James?
Yeah. The digital edition.
Is it in the chat?
You went up to
the chat.
You went up to the loft to get the digital edition from 1992.
Yeah.
The digital edition of the bestiary.
From 1992.
I went and got it without moving. Took a photo of every page. Put them into a PDF and sent it to Robert.
That's very nice of you. Thank you. So here's the bestiary. Let's take a look at this a little moment so people in the chat or people can watch at home.
That classic ogre. Oof.
Oh, forget the ogre. Look at that tree man. He's the lad.
There is a lot of text, is what I'm going to say. Like a lot of text. Like it's dense.
I love this book.
Oh,
yeah.
Look at
And obviously there's some nostalgia, but like it's cool. And I also think, like, interestingly, going back to it, it's like there's a little tiny bit of rules. Like I had this book as a kid and I'm like, oh, cool art. Makes me want to play. Like I remember getting the Grotz book and then being like, oh, here's all the stuff I can have. But also like I learn all about night goblins and blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
And you know what's nice here is they don't go into like crazy full details for everyone, but they do have just a nice little splash thing so you can compare the units. And I know it's a lot easier to do here than it is in Age of Sigmar just because there was a crap ton of data. But even being able to just look at it and go like, oh, I can see how good these guys all are and how tough all these guys are and like make those little comparisons is actually quite nice.
So my question, so I guess a follow-up question then is I've asked if you think the Battletome lore is worth it or not worth it. Especially, I think someone said in the chat earlier, first-time purchase is probably worth it, but every repeating purchase is probably very unlike. Like, if you roughly know most of the story, like if that's something you're interested in, then probably don't pick it up a second time. My follow-on would be, do you think I think the campaign books, because one of my favorite books Games Workshop have released, which I did buy physically, was the book where you got the all of the ghost guys, or the death faction, and they were attacking into the realm gates, into the all points, and then they finally took one over. I think it was called, I can't remember what it was called, but it was released a couple of years ago, maybe pre-COVID. There are diminishing returns on repeat purchases, definitely. But I think the campaign books are awesome, and they get you some, because see how interesting immediately the conversation has switched. I think the Battletomes don't really give me the value that I deserve because it's the same thing rehashed previously. That's an opinion, obviously, yeah. But I think that's roughly the take of the chat and me and James and Dan. And then a campaign book, something awesome and cool I haven't seen before. Surely that's what we should be paying money for, right? Is kind of my point. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I think, like, let's say I'll use Tyranids as an example, and a good chunk of that book was, I'll say, rewritten, but it's still the same stories that I've read in 3 different Tyranid books. You know, like, it's the origins of the Tyranids and how they do things and everything like that. It's the same. You can only dress it up in so many different outfits before you're like, that's the same person they're just wearing a different hat.
So what do you want? So what do you want them to do, right? Like, so like, what would you like? Because
we said, 2 books. When you release it, give me 2 so I can choose. Be like, here is or you've got the Tyranid lore and then the new rules or the updated rules. Because realistically, when you're like Votan, right? Let's compare Votan to Lumineth Realm Lords. Lumineth Realm Lords had 3 books in 18 months, I think it was, 20 months, something like that. There is not a full load of new lore in each of those books. So you are paying for the design work the one lot of design work and writing was done, and then they added a little bit to each successive book. But largely the core of it is there, and it's unchanging. You just fucking do the thing of being like, just change my homework so it doesn't look like it's the same thing. Whereas if you went, hey, 6 months down the line, new rules pack for them, and also here's the updated rules for some of the new updated lore that includes everything that we've had so far and some of the new stuff, you'd be like, oh yeah, okay, cool, that's all right, I like that. But I think, like we say, the first time you buy it, you freaking love it. But after that, people start to skip the lore because it's the same. We've read it. And also, you're paying for the same thing multiple times.
Yeah, all right. Well, then let's discuss that, right? Okay, so because that's a really good point, and will probably be mirrored in the conversation about the rules. So first bit, I guess there's a couple of like futures that we go through, and I'd like to know what everyone's like future that they would want. My future that I would like is I would like that each like when they do Gloomspite Gits, sure, I'd like them to cover the Gloomspite Gits that they had, that they, you know, the way they described it previously. But I want loads of new stuff. I want to know that Scragrot. I know Scragrot before was getting loads of profits and like keeping them in his own kind of like temporal cave and turning them into mushrooms so he could track the bad moon. I want more stories on that. I don't want them to retell me that story. I'd like them to tell it to someone who's new, but then I want more added because they've done the work where they've written that before. They can just copy and paste that and then start a new page, write a few new bits. So that's one version of the future. The other version of the future that is just completely copy and pasted. Therefore, I don't see how it's a value to me and why I should purchase it. Those are the two. Or then I guess a little bit of work. So of those 3, James, because I think those are the only 3 options. Which one would you want out of your purchase if you were going to purchase?
Are those my only 3 options?
Well, okay, is there another option that you can see? Because I can't see another option.
So in my head, I almost feel like you could give me a narrative book for a faction.
Yeah.
And a rules book for a faction.
Yeah.
2 separate things.
Yeah.
£15 each.
Okay.
So still £30 if I want both. But one, you can then update yearly. It's just the battle scrolls. It's just the war scrolls. It's just the rules.
Okay.
The other one, you could update me as the narrative goes along.
So as you have something cool to add.
Yeah. So you suddenly we're like, oh, Thundia. Oh, it's blown up. Thanquol ate all the Cronspires, and now he's a giant Cronspire rat.
Yeah.
Then you update me.
Yeah,
you update my narrative then, and then you're like, oh, new Skaven lore book. Rule book, separate. Here's your narrative book. And I think I'm slightly more mind blown by this because, and the chat will shoot me, but in my new fact-finding job role for the Honest Wargamer,
Jamie,
I have obviously reopened my hang on, sorry, let me just check. My 5th edition and 7th edition digital copies of the Skaven PDFs.
I can't believe they even made digital copies back then, but okay.
Yeah, they did, yeah. You obviously didn't know. You had to be forward thinking, you see. And interestingly, just looking through them, like, they're so good. So, like, the 7th edition starts with, like, Warhammer paragraph. This is what it is. Why would you buy a Skaven army? Like, this is the opening. How the book works tells me a bit about that. Find out more. Go to our website. And I'm like, oh, cool. Are they the same? So no, they're not. Like, there's no copy and pasting. Like, the older ones, like, here's a book. A bit more like now. Here's our content. Here's some narrative. Oh, here's some more narrative. So there are... Hang on. Take me a minute. Hang on. Before I get to any rules, there are 23 straight pages of lots of little text and narrative.
Like, like small text, and size 12.
And then and then the other one, who knows? But it's cool, and they're different, and they both talk about the Under Empire, but like where it's at and how it's got there. And I think in my head that's the point I went back to, and God, someone in the chat might know, but the distance between those two editions might be huge. But I also think between the last Skaven book and this Skaven book was about 4 years, and I feel like there was no new narrative. So don't bother selling it me, because it's almost sad, I think, right? Like I talked earlier that realistically Warhammer's a hobby we all buy into loads, and like however you play and however much you play, even if you're like, I only really play the game, I don't follow the narrative, and I have no interest in it, you probably care about your little rats. And if you play them long enough, you probably care about that Skaven narrative. And there's almost something sad to be like, I play this army, I love this army, but the company that makes this army don't love it enough to do anything with it for 5 years.
Yeah, like, so yeah, I think absolutely fantastic points. I really do. Like, I think one of the conversations that being brought up in the chat is like, you know, it's Games Workshop, until they change their corporate structure, like, is it going to matter? I think it's because it's so healthy, right? Because what we're talking about, Skaven's a really good example, or Ogres. Ogres just being brought up in the chat. Ogres didn't have their book for years. It's fair to say that even when Ogres got their book, I feel like it was pretty half done, and Gutbusters were basically ignored. Yeah, like why does the Firebelly exist? Although they did have some lore.
Because the Mournfang because the Ice blokes had a book.
Yeah, right. They had a book. So they did a first edition version of it, copy and pasted it into the second edition book, and now, lo and behold, I would be very unsurprised if the third edition book of Ogres isn't very fucking similar to the second edition book. Like, they haven't moved the story on. So we're talking like 3 years, this incredibly creative faction. And where, like, I think the sad element is if someone out there was to be like someone poured their heart and soul into writing and adding into this amazing lexicon that is like the Ogre IP, it wouldn't be quote-unquote legal, it wouldn't be quote-unquote official, and it also wouldn't be quote-unquote like... they would be shut down. They would be like, you know, like the corporate overlords would be come over and be like, how dare you? We wish to copy and paste our information for £30 every 3 years. Like, and then give everyone a slap. And I can't think of anything worse from a creative company than intentionally selling something woeful. If that makes it, like, you know, like, and I again, at the top of the show, as I said, it's a corporate structure problem, because they have a very few creatives working under incredible pressure for very little money. So I'd like to be super clear that this is a structural problem. But anyway, like, I agree with James. It's sad, right? Like, because imagine, so like the next time I get to read about Ogres will be in 3 more years. So,
and it'll probably be the same stuff.
Right? Like you have 3 years. You could have had like just a guy who's stuck in a corner for like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, just writing his little heart out to come up with as many cool little things as possible, and you can't do it. So I guess we covered that bit a little bit. So when we talk about the lore, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? You get on that. Like, now this isn't really attached to the Battletomes, but one of the things that, like, the book specifically, one of the things that the chat brought up earlier, like, also when you aren't updating the models. Like, so like with Skaven is a great example. They're like, no new models, and you're like, okay, no new models. Sweet. So, like, why are you selling me a book? Like, what do I need if you've copy and pasted the lore pretty much? Yeah. And if the rules updates, which we haven't really discussed yet, but if the rules updates are fairly similar to the last edition, but very few, like, minor health quality changes, like, why are you selling me a book? Like, and why am I buying it? If that makes sense. Like, what, like, you're like, if you don't, it's such an odd conversation. Let me, as a creator, I'd like to just talk. I have this sometimes when I'm doing a show. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to, like, I'm meant to be doing a show today, but I'm not really sure what today's show's meant to be on. Like, that's super okay as a creator sometimes. Sometimes you don't have, Dan, you must get that, right? Sometimes you just don't have, you got writer's block. You just don't know what to do, right?
Yep.
That happens. So then I don't do a show. Because I don't have to do a show, but they have to sell a book.
Yeah,
but we don't have to buy a book.
I'm absolutely one of those players who I love competitive, I love narrative, and I love lore. Like, I am someone who is, I'm an omnivore. I like, and painting, like, I nibble at everything. I enjoy it all. My hobby is like my bum, well-rounded. But the one thing I noticed, and I've used Tyranids and Votann as an example so many times because I read both of those books in the last couple of months when I got back into 40k after a very long hiatus. So I bought Tyranids to get back in, and then Votann came out, and I was like, feed me my space beards. And reading those two books were staggeringly different experiences. Now, Tyranids was my first army way back when I played 40k as a kid, and I played it, like through high school and university and stuff like that. And I loved it, and I've consumed so much NID lore. And then when I read the book, I was like, oh, so I've come back after like almost a decade away from 40k, more than a decade away from 40k, and my first Tyranid book back feels like the last Tyranid book I had, as far as like the lore goes. There's a few little bits and pieces, but it's all quite the same. Whereas reading the Votann book, which was all new, all fresh, everything was great. My favorite little story in there, for those who've read it, there's an aside about the Mad Core, which is like one of these Votann supercomputers that's entire dwarven empire was killed, and it felt all of their death, and it went insane with sorrow and rage and shit like that. Like, it was an effort to read through the Tyranid book that I had to do as somebody who wants to play Tyranids and loves them, whereas the Votann book was all fresh and new. And the problem is that every time you pay for a book, the rules don't change that much and the lore doesn't change now, meaning that largely the book is a cost requirement with massively diminishing benefits.
Okay, so great point. I'd really like to come back to that because there's a great quote. But before we do that, can we just validate the next part, which is about the rules? Okay, so like the rules, like in Battletomes specifically, we're on Battletomes at the moment, and we will very quickly touch on the GHP towards the end of the convo. So the rules updates. It's felt like in Age of Sigmar 3 have been at best kind of clerical. Now, people can definitely disagree or not agree with this. I think one of the things that's definitely feels true, having looked at a lot of the rules, and I know James and Dan, I've looked at the rules a little bit more than both of you. They have been like, some cases, a copy and paste with a couple of additions, and in some cases they've just tidied up a couple of little rules, and then they've just changed a couple of war scrolls and then patted it on the ass and kicked it out the door. And in some cases they've done a really wild job, but that's like Sylvaneth really stands out to me, as does Nurgle as much as we took the piss out of it when it did release, but they did add elements to it which kind of really made it feel like it was, like a Nurgle book. And then in some cases, like I'm very invested in the Zinch book. That feels like a very copy and paste book, but unsurprisingly, their brand new model they made quite good.
Shocker.
Shocker. Like without even like a really good example would be Alariel's War Scroll. Okay, so Alariel's War Scroll is able to summon pretty much one of anything. Like once per battle, can summon one of anything from like the list, like the roster of things that you can summon, like that you can take in a Sylvaneth army. But actually, can't do either of the two new bug units. Specifically because I reckon they weren't in the second edition book when they copy and pasted them over. Do you know what I mean? Like they just fucking forgot them. They were like,
They were like, you can have an entire tree lord or a big ass unit of something, or oh fuck, we forgot the flap. We could have sold new shit.
Yeah.
Zashmir in the chat pointed out was something which I do really like about Age of Sigmar is that each edition they do push the storyline. Like, yes, we were joking about how they treat the Stormcast, just being like, there's a new chamber. Fuck that chamber specifically into the dust. And then, they gave him new armor. But forget everybody who came before. They're all meaningless to us. They're Sigmar's second favorite sons now. But the fact that they do push the storyline each time is rad. Like the fact that it goes from
you mean the meta narrative as opposed to the individual.
Yes, the narrative of the world, like the fact that we started reclaiming the world after the Age of Chaos, and then there was the Necroquake and the Rise of Death, and now you're kind of like in Gur with Kragnos and everything like that. I absolutely do want to credit where it's due. One of the things that broke me about the old world was that it was stagnant and not moving. 40k, they've started to move forward a little bit, but I don't know if it's really still has that momentum. But Age of Sigmar's momentum as far as a world and storyline development is spectacular. So at least for me, Zachary, you're 100% right.
Dan, I feel like we can say that it happens. Yeah, I understand, like, because we're so starved that it's fair to say that you're like, it's spectacular. I'm like, it happens. Like because you almost feel like it happening should be the default, but we're so pleased it happens. We're like, amazing. Yeah, we don't even review whether or not that actual like content of that moving forward is good. We're just so amazed at momentum. We're like, holy shit, momentum. Yeah. 10 out of 10. Yeah.
But look, you know what I will like? I put on a good little bit of weight during COVID, and when I started to notice some of those kilos sliding off me, that. You know what? I was going from zero momentum to momentum, and I absolutely still celebrated that. So you know what? Age of Sigmar After Fantasy was a bit thick, and you know what? If it posts a gym selfie every now and then, I'm gonna let it. I'm gonna give it. It's got permission.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think momentum should be something rewarded. But generally, I feel like it's fair to say that the rules aren't overarchingly changed very much. But again, the meta-narrative of what Age of Sigmar is, with battle tactics in this version of Age of Sigmar and a bunch of other stuff, have fairly monumentally changed how the game plays. So it doesn't feel like it's, like a 2.0 to a 2.5 from the rules conversation. And I'm sure from the meta-narrative, it doesn't feel like it either. But I'm more talking about the books that they sell us, like, all the time, right? So like, with that said, I think, like, we can kind of, like, put a pin in, like, Battletomes and their value. And I'd like to ask the kind of chat and also you two, like, what you think. Oh, and rules, like this is, I guess I'm going to take this more than anything else. I definitely don't feel like the rules have £30 worth of value. I feel like if it's the first time I bought the book, then it would maybe have £30 worth of value. But as, like, a repeat buyer, I definitely don't see £30 worth of R&D for me as a consumer. If we take a novel or a graphic novel, for instance, and actually maybe a time to look at how other game systems do it. Like, for instance, with D&D, when there's a new campaign, therefore new rules, it's kind of like a £25 book. I looked it up earlier, so it's a little bit more expensive. Whereas if we look at something like Star Wars Legion or MCP, like which are kind of current larger games, they don't have like books as we know it. So they release miniatures and then they release rules with the miniatures. So when you buy the miniature, you get access to the rule immediately. And as James will attest, if they update any of those rules, then those rules are updated for free and available to download digitally.
Yeah,
they do it both ways. So you can go on their website, you can download the rule for free, you can print it off, you can do what you want, or if you want, you can buy like all the replacement cards for the heroes and all the cards for the season for 20 quid in physical format.
Yeah. And the other thing to put out there as well for D&D is that a D&D campaign book is all new lore and it's all new rules. Like it might be, there might be new subclasses for a barbarian or something like that, but they're all fresh and new. Like it's not like.
I understand what you're saying is you can't compare apples and oranges, but I feel like we can. Why, for the same price point almost, am I not getting that amount of stuff out of one of these books?
Well, and that's what I mean. And like, I think it's also investment. Like, look at the next time you do flip open a D&D campaign book, look at how they credit so many creatives, artists, like lore writers, authors, game designers. Like, they have so many people create it because they invest in these books. And then I don't know how much labor they invest in new Battletomes. That is a question I don't have the answer to.
Oh, I would say that there's probably 2 to 3 lore writers, 2 to 3 rules writers. But they work on the entire system as the whole thing, and then they have like in-house artists, but those in-house artists will be working across all of the different game systems to produce stuff. For the price of the codex, you can get 3 Siege of Terror audiobooks. Again, a good point. Because I think, James, but this is where price per comparison kind of comes into it a little bit. Like, you playing a lot of computer games, as you know, or as I know, but like the chat might not know, like you end up with this kind of situation where you compare it to, like, say, a DLC from a computer game, and a triple A computer game as DLC. Imagine, and now, I mean, I do know that we have Skyrim remastered for the 734th time. Yeah,
still worth it.
Still worth it. But how many times have you bought Skyrim?
One time.
Okay. Yeah, so one time, and occasionally, they're like, "Oh, we've made this remastered." And maybe not that one, but some of them you get for free. So it's like, oh, we added all this content. It's an update. Oh, you get it for free. Oh, the community can mod it. You can have that for free. Later down the line, maybe. I actually rebought Skyrim in VR.
Okay, wow. But that's horrific. A different format, right?
Completely different format. Yeah. It was horrific, but hilarious and worth every penny.
Oh,
carry on.
I've bought it twice. I had it once on my console back home, and I played hundreds of hours of it. I bought it again with the remaster, and again, hundreds of hours. So if you want to talk about value for money, I absolutely get my value for money out of those.
Yeah, Painted Tentacle makes a point that World of Warcraft every expansion is $60, but it's a lot.
And £10 a month.
And £10 a month, but it's a lot of content,
World
right?
of Warcraft, I think, is a really good comparison to Warhammer as computer games go.
Yeah.
Right. This might be a long tangent.
Go for it.
Buckle in.
I'm ready.
World of Warcraft, I think, actually, and who brought World of Warcraft? Painting Tentacle. Thank you very much. World of Warcraft's a really interesting comparison, and I played a long time ago, and I played for 3 years straight, maybe. And then maybe a couple of years on and off. But so I'm buying a game. So now it's cheap. The buy-in is cheap. If I want the original ones, it's 30 quid for all of them. And I think even more recently, lots of them were free for however many levels. But so the buy-in to World of Warcraft is cheaper now. But it's not if I started. And I would think lots of people that listen to the show will listen back. And maybe not all of them, and maybe lots of newer people. But anyone that joined Age of Sigmar at the beginning, let's say we invested, I don't know, £300 in an army, and then £30 in an army book for that one army every couple of years, and then the General's Handbook. So we've invested another 30 quid at least every year, and then our tape measure broke, and we invested in that, and our dice weren't as fancy as the new ones, so we invested in that. And World of Warcraft, I think, is a good comparison because it's expensive, and it's like something people subscribe to. So they didn't just pay £60 once like you do with lots of games. They've paid £60 once and then £10 a month every month for up to, I think, like 15 years now. And so at that point, if I stop playing, how much money have I spent? And in theory, it's worth nothing. So I've had a lot of enjoyment, but I'm kind of tied in to this monster that I've probably spent $3,000 on. And I think Warhammer's interesting in that one, right? Because probably everyone in here has subscribed to this. We've bought an army. We've bought a book. We might have bought 4 books. We might have bought Thondia. We might have bought the General's Handbook. We might have bought dice. We might have bought a tape measure. We've bought event tickets. Like, there comes a point where, like, Games Workshop are saying, you have to buy a physical book. You have to have the physical book to play. You have to have the physical book to play at our events. You have to have the official Bastion Cathalos model to play at our events. And I know other events are different, but I'm going off that tangent for now. Like, we've bought in. We've spent a lot of money. So the next time when they're like, we're not doing digital books anymore, you have to have a physical book. Like, I'm $2,000 in.
Yeah, you're trapped a bit.
I'm $2,000 in, right?
Yeah.
So I can play this game and only spend 30 quid, which isn't a lot because I've spent $2,000. 30 quid more. It's not too bad. However, like, I could say no, but I can't say no because I'm $2,000 in. And the older I get, the more I realize, like, oh, I'm $2,000 in. And also, I've played this one system for like 6 years. And I think, like, that's interesting for me because I've got a very good friend of mine who I've been friends with my whole life. His wife is a Warcraft player, and, like, I haven't played in years, but she still raids every weekend. And sometimes she's like, we'll all be there and she'll be like, oh, hang on, I'll be back in an hour. Like, I've got to go do this raid. I'm like, still. She's like, yeah, well, I've done it for 7 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like, for me, like, I'm not saying people are still playing Warhammer because they feel like they have to, but I think, like, we're tied in. And that's one of the other issues I think we have as a hobby, because I saw earlier in the chat someone said we need to stop buying books because then they might change how they do it. But I think the issue isn't that we need to stop buying books, because people still will, because people have to, because they've built this system where they control, like, the hugest part of the gaming market. And I'd love to see someone in the chat go find me another MMO. So MMORPG, so a massive multiplayer online role-playing game, so like WoW, that still can sell me a game, expansion, etc. for £30 to £60, whatever they cost these days, and make me subscribe £10 a month for the privilege to play that game. And I think there's that interesting flip. I would love someone to go out and find me a physical model company that can control their consumer base so much to make me go and spend £1,000, £500, £300, army dependent, on models, and then make me buy a £30 book that in 4 months they could say, not that one anymore, this one.
That's a great point.
I still have to buy it.
That's a great point, James. Like, I think the sunk cost fallacy actually maybe is very true. I got a quote from Jacob, by the way, who he brought something up earlier. He said, I never looked at Games Workshop army books or codexes as the price of this reflects the amount of effort or skill or time that goes into it. And instead, he said, I've always seen as this is a required purchase to participate, which I think is kind of like, I agree with you. I feel like the purchasing of these battle tomes, ignore it, like, if you've bought the 4th Lumineth Battletome, if you bought all 4 in a row, yeah, I really feel like you never thought that you were buying anything new. You just felt like you were buying entry to the party, is what I really felt like. Yeah.
And every time you rocked up, they were like, oh, actually, it's shirt and tie. And so you're like, fuck, you went away. You came back with your shirt and tie. They were like, oh, boots. It's dress shoes. And then you're like, fuck, you went away. You came back and they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's dinner jackets now. Like every time you rocked back up, the door bitch just gave you a harder time about getting in.
And I really do feel like that investiture, because you're also invested with your friends. Like I have relationships in Warhammer that I do not want to walk away from, and I never want to walk away from, as an example. So like there's even more, and that's, I guess, true of guilds. James, great point, by the way, like tying it to World of Warcraft, because that feels very similar. Yeah, like
they're the same thing.
They're the same thing. You're absolutely right. And also
different universes.
And also unique, right? Like a modern game or a modern MMO wouldn't probably try to sit you down, sell you the main game, and then sell you a subscription fee.
Like I think the interesting narrative to that of me is that throughout the last few years, games have tried and they fail miserably. Like, go look at New World, which was Amazon's, and they pumped money in. Like, I bought it, I played it. It wasn't amazing, but like they had such complex systems put in, and there wasn't even a subscription, and it was still a mess. And actually, weirdly, like I went back to WoW a few years ago, and I was like, I've played so many better games. Like this game's sorry if you're a WoW player, this game's kind of garbage. Like they've reskinned it, it looks pretty, it looks nice, but I'm still like tabbing and pressing 5, followed by 6, followed by 3, followed by 1, and learning those. And it's interesting because I think like almost, and this is my secondary tangent to this whole conversation, and then I will shut up. The interesting thing for me is that like what we have is WoW is probably the last bastion of that entire generation of games that sold you a game and then made you pay to play the game that you'd already paid for. Like it is the last bastion of that whole era. The other ones went. There was Guild Wars. There was Terra.
ESO's hanging on. ESO is actually really quite strong.
But you can play it for free, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So like that tried it. It failed. Yeah. That's a huge company with a huge narrative and a huge lore. They tried it. They failed. Like all of those games gave up. Star Wars, The Old Republic. They all gave up. World of Warcraft is like the last bastion of that. And the flip is that I think Warhammer has been banging on since the 80s. And I think at this point they're almost the last bastion of we can do things how we want because enough of you have enough money in this hobby for it not to matter. Whereas, interestingly, loads of new games, and a really good example, and they're probably a harder comparison, but like flip comparison is the other probably giant game that everyone knows that no one can step away from would be like League of Legends.
Which is free.
Where it's free. It's free. The entry cost is nothing.
But the thing that they do is they give you a way to measure your skill sets. Like that's what they do. They give you achievements, and they give you and I know that many other games do that as well. Like it's one of the things that I think the Warhammer has been able to uncapitalize on massively is they rankings are a good thing. They have, because they've bought the ITC, they have decided that they are going to get into giving you like an E-point for your achievements in game. But why they don't have like an app where you just get an achievement if you bought everything in a range? Do you know what I mean? Like they're so shit at marketing. It's outrageous how bad they are.
But it's interesting, right? Because they don't need to be. That's my point. They've tied us in. We're just doing what they tell us to do. The same as some people are still paying a tenner a month to play WoW. Yeah. Whereas League of Legends are like, here's a game, it's free. And we think or know that our branding, our marketing, and our game is so good, addictive, or rewarding, or infuriating, depending on how you want to take it, that we can then sell you all the stuff you don't need.
Yeah.
Do you want to look cooler? Here's a skin. It's 30 quid for a character.
Yeah.
Because some of them are. But you want it because you want to look cool. And like, oh, Ezreal, you like him. He can teleport. And so it's free. He's free. But you want to look cool, it's 30 quid. And I think, like, for me, that's the flip, right? And like we talked about MCP earlier, but what they're doing is like, and they're giving us a physical product, so there has to be a difference. But the core set for MCP, it's been discussed a million times. Like, they must have flogged them to TK Maxx because TK Maxx had them. And they were cheap. Like, for physical models, it was 50 quid. So they're like, just almost give them away. And then when you're in, do you really, Rob, you've bought the core set, but do you really want to just play Captain Marvel and Captain America? Or do you like the Guardians of the Galaxy? Why not just spend 90 quid?
Apart from Chris Pratt, I love them all.
There you go. So, like, why not spend 90 quid and just play them?
And I think that's the thing that Age of Sigmar did at the start very well. Before books, like when it was the General's Handbook and all of your allegiance abilities were in the General's Handbook, like they did it incredibly well, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as it's bloated, it's lost it. It was so, compared to Warhammer Fantasy, it was so financially easy to get into an army. Like the barriers to entry were incredibly low. And that's why I think Star Wars Legion MCP have been so successful. The barriers to entry are low. You buy the core set and then you're like, hey, do you want to play Brotherhood of Mutants? I'm like, yeah, I do. And it's like $150. You have everything. You have everything to play that entire affiliation.
But the thing is they're successful, Dan, but they're not sell me the same book 4 times in 18 months successful and they will buy it, right? So, and that's kind of like, and I feel like that we get into like the rub of the issue, which is what Jacob spoke about, is that we feel like, because I think it was Painting Tentacle in the chat who said, I can't play with my army if I don't have the new book. And that's absolutely not true. Like, there are several sources in ways to find the rules out for £0. I never require a paper copy. Like, there's an app with all 3 War Scrolls, at least, that Games Workshop produce, which is the very minimum that they should do, right? But, like, similarly, I know Wikipedia exists, and all of the rules are on there. And actually, I know that all of the rules are on there with the FAQs also put in. So why would I ever open a physical book when I would maybe have to... Like, I'm not going to print something. Like, grow the fuck up. It's 2022. I'm not going to, like if they're like, you must print this in order to board this shit at, like, fucking plane to fly somewhere. I'm like, no, I'm just not going to fly there. I'm not printing something. Like, I'm not doing it in this year, right? Like, it's on Wikipedia. It's all sourced together. So I just use that. It's much easier than, okay, well, this is what the book says, but now I'm going to go onto the internet anyway to find out what the FAQ says. I'm like, why am I not going to the place that only has the FAQ? So I think it's absolutely a myth that you have to buy the book to play with your army. But I feel like it's a feeling that we all feel that we have to do. I feel like...
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like if you're like, I'm going to go and play with, as James said, my sunk cost in this army... I need to go buy the book if I'm going to go play. And I just think that that's nonsense. Maybe you feel like it's valid. I don't know. Like maybe it's like it's more of a feeling thing than anything else. But like I think that that's the main reason people buy the book, is because they don't think it's going to have any inherent value, and instead they feel like that they've got to buy the book to be a part of the game. And I feel like that is fairly predatory, but also like it's fairly understandable for the consumer and really woeful from Games Workshop in that they don't do much to make those books of value to us. That's kind of my thoughts. You got any thoughts, Dan?
Yeah, that makes sense. No, that actually kind of tracks. Like it's a shame because as much as what I would say is I don't really have anything new to add except for it's very easy to critique, but it's hard to deny the success of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we can critique, there's nothing wrong there. The fact that so many people know they don't need to get their books from there is probably the reason they no longer produce PDF content, because they don't want them shared around as easily. But
It'd be terrifying if someone could acquire a Thondia book without leaving their desk. Thanks in the chat, whoever acquired that book.
But the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. We're talking about this because the books are still sellers. They're still there. So as much as we want to critique, it works.
But it's not about whether or not it works. Again, it's not about the business practice. That's not really what I ever wanted to talk about. What I really want to talk about is, like, is it of value to me? If that makes sense. Like, what I'm almost sad as an Age of Sigmar fan is that when the new Ogre book came out, that they didn't absolutely revitalize playing ogres and reading about ogres. They didn't give me this wicked story with all of this fun stuff about ogres, but they also didn't, sure, it's a better book than it was to play, right? But that's just because they literally, Dan, added like +1 to a gun profile and changed it from D6 to D3 +3. And people are like, yes, that's 30 quid. Good work, lads. Pat on that ass off. Like,
there you go. And it's not 30 quid. It's 30 quid times the amount of people that buy it. So it's like, yep, good. Yep, take it. Put it in the bank. Put it in the bank.
It's a huge fucking profit. Like, it's crazy money. And like, I know as a community we're going to continue to accept it, but I didn't want to have the conversation. Also, I'm not like other content creators, neither's James, neither Dan. None of us get anything for free. Proudly so. I mention it a lot because it's super important. We don't take anything for free. So therefore, I never am on the other side. I'm never like, well, why wouldn't you get the book? It just gets delivered to your house. You don't even need to think about it. I have to go find out the local reseller. I have to go find out who's who. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to be a part of the process. Like, and so on my side of the fence, because I don't get thousands of pounds worth, there's a guy that made a video just who was like, I got sent £6,000 worth of Games Workshop stuff over the past year, being one of their influencers. And I don't think he even included one of the books. It was just the amount of plastic he got sent, like, for books. And the final bit to talk about before we talk about anything else is that these books definitely are invalidated. Like, James has gone and bought, like, sure, there's a new copy of World of Warcraft next year in, like, this one is Dragonfly, but if you want to, you can go back to where the fucking Wrath of the Lich King thing happened and just bomb around there if you want to, because it's there and it exists in the game. Like, it's an expanded universe.
But it's like Total War Warhammer. Every new one, they expand, they build, you can still do Mighty Empires, but, like, Total War Warhammer 3's come out. If you'd rather stick to Total War Warhammer 2, and you've got it, you can.
Right?
But we could all go and play Warhammer Age of Sigmar 1. Or we could all go play Warhammer General's Handbook 1. The issue is that there is no facility to do it because they're moving those rules on.
Oh, and also they're deleting those rules, right? Like,
well,
so,
yes.
Like now, more than ever, like, if you didn't go and pick up the physical handbook for General's Handbook, whatever, you'd have to go find an eBay rescue version of a secondhand. Like, these rules actually will be fairly temporary, thankfully, unless someone happens to PDF them. Like, so, like, you know, you can't necessarily go back in time. Question, why am I meant to be bringing my book when I can't tell what's up to date with White Dwarf's FAQs expansions is also another fair point about the book economy. The final point to make really quickly, or to talk about, is the GHB, because for Age of Sigmar specifically, the GHB comes out every 6 months and it's how we play the game. Now, we talked about, like, a subscription service that we pay already, but, like, we already feel like we have to pay the subscription every 3 years or 6 months, depending on which faction you play. Because there's also no rhyme, no reason for that either. Like, I don't know that my very old OCR Bone Reapers book now is even going to get an update. You know, like, I don't even know if it's going to be updated for this edition. And really importantly, by the time that the roadmap of releases has come out, they, like, as an example, Imperial Guard was one of the very first books for Warhammer 40,000 8th edition, and it's one of the last for Warhammer 40,000 9th edition. So it had about 5 years in between. But next year is the new edition of 40k. Like, do you really feel like you've got your 3 years out of your book that you're getting now? You know, as an example, there's more than we've looked at the timeline. I think there's like maybe a book or two that won't be released by the end of this year, or will be released at the very end of 2023. But then it's Age of Sigmar 4 the following summer. So do you really feel like you will have got that? Like if you were early on, you're like, yeah, great. But also, if you're later, like it also.
If you're Lumineth, you know you're getting another book at the start of that edition. So you're like, God, how many more?
Do you remember that
doesn't shit enough.
Do you remember that wonderful moment when the Slaanesh book came out and it was hot trash, and there was a whole conversation that it was written for a new edition, and it's done really well since the new edition.
Gargants?
Well, no, just Slaanesh.
Oh,
and then maybe we should get some Slaanesh players and ask them if they feel they've got their worth from their book.
Because I feel like they probably haven't, James. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All two of them.
Actually, they're currently 1.4% of the meta.
True.
They're one of the least popular armies in the game right now.
I wonder why.
Shocker.
Because they're shit. All right.
No.
So someone says that I feel like the General's Handbook is for $30 or $40 or whatever it costs in the UK, is somewhat better value, but still the same problem. Although it also comes with an app in a code. Like I really can't see. And so like the reason I kind of wanted to bring the whole thing up was because like if you're going to spend your money, I feel like it should be on minis, and I feel like. We don't talk about that enough. The books are cool, don't get me wrong, okay? Well, I mean, when they used to be cooler, and they're way cooler when the Forge World people did them. So let's be really super clear about that. I think these are like kind of cartoonish style books that they release nowadays. But like I honestly think that you're better spending your money on miniatures. And I would like to encourage people to do that because I think there's nothing in this conversation that's made me think, yeah, I should buy a book. There's nothing where they've been like, well, you should support the faction or the business or the company. I'm like, I could do that by buying the minis, right? Like, there's been nothing that's made me think, and I would like to really encourage people because there's such a huge amount of waste that gets created by these things. And like, you know, there's this huge kind of like pile of nothing. Whereas I feel like if you at least buy the minis, you've got something cool and a cool toy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's more of an asset. I would say that I didn't mind the original couple, like 2 to 3 General's Handbooks, like cheaper paperback books that they had a full 6 new battle plans, and they often changed up the allegiance abilities for the stuff inside of them. And they changed up the points as well. I actually really quite enjoyed, and every year I got excited for the new GHB. But I think now just the volume of change being like, it's the new GHB and the Thondia Battle Pack and the this and the that. Like it's a constant. It's the reason that games, a lot of card games and like Magic the Gathering, I don't know if anyone saw Magic the Gathering got looked into like by the bank for how solid an investment it is, and they were like they've flooded their own market. They've damaged. They have the monopoly on the market, and they've damaged their market share by oversaturating it, and they've made a bunch of other bad decisions. But that's where I think I'm worried that the book bloat for Warhammer, especially Age of Sigmar, is getting too many Battletomes back to back, too many books required to play the game. If you are a gaming player, if that's your vibe, there's too many things you require to stay current with the current state of like competitive Warhammer. It's just, I think it gets to a point where people are going to stop engaging with that, and that worries me because I love the war dollies, and I don't want us to see like a diminishing amount of models and gameplay and tournament size.
Yeah, I think one of the other interesting points is that see, this is the thing that always made me laugh. Like people like when like they do an FAQ for Battletome, they're always like, "Oh, my book feels invalid," but like. I guess like I've always really like struggled with seeing that opinion written online because I'm like, it was always invalid. Like, it's just going to get FAQ'd. It's been FAQ'd since the beginning of time. Like, this is what I mean, like modern Warhammer, for example. So I'm like, this is always going to happen. So, like, the naivety with which you went into buy that book is insane. Like it almost is required because they don't do any QA to a degree that's of worth. So, like, it's required that they're going to do that. So, why you bought that book thinking, I hope this is absolutely sacrosanct, unlike every other book before, it's always confused me, right? And I've always find that quite weird. So I've never really understood that take. I don't know. Have you got any takeaways from this, James? Have you got any thoughts about it? Chat. Let me just, while you guys think on it, Dan, same question. Chat, same thoughts. My takeaway is this, that I'm not upset with the idea of buying a book, but I do feel like the rules should be independent. I would just like the books to be better and bigger. I would like to get value from my £25-30, right? Because I feel like that's what they really need to sell me on. Like, the idea that it's a subscription I need to be a part of the hobby is something that I've been able to get out of my mind, and I'm hoping this show has done for other people. You do not need to buy a book to be a part of the hobby. If you have an army, you can just get the rules and play the game. You absolutely don't need to be a part of that, and I would like people to start to unfuck their mind on that subject. But I would like, for the game that I love, the universe I like, very much like I love a movie, I want there to be a sequel. I love the Deadwood TV series, and when they finally released a movie to tie off that story, I was over the fucking moon. You could have put that behind 3 paywalls and some sort of like degrading
and
act.
you would have still gone for it.
Like, I'm in because I want the thing, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you can sell me a thing I want, no problem, but you can't sell me a thing I don't want, or that's just a copy of something I've already got. So, like, that's kind of like my, I guess.
Or something that at some point you'll realize is a manipulative way of getting money out of your wallet.
I don't even know if they do it because, like, it's manipulation, right? They might just be dense, and they might not know how to get off the cycle of what they're doing. Does that make sense?
Also a possibility, yeah, for sure.
They might not know. I think you can plot the value you get from a book on a scale from Beast of Chaos to Luminous Realm Wars. You can. That's true. You want to be able to look back at a book with nostalgia rather than regret. And I would say that I feel like most of the modern books are books of regret, right? Yeah.
All of them. Almost all of them.
Yeah. Almost.
I think I would like to, and I probably don't even have them anymore, but I feel like if I got every Stormcast book, the opening narrative of what happened, and then that weird little calendar update would be the same in all of them.
Yeah.
With maybe a day added. So you're almost buying the same thing over and over again. And then I think it's a bit like, isn't it? Like, if you go to the shop to buy eggs, but you've already got eggs, and the eggs they all go off at the same time, for lack of a better thing, you're like, oh, now I've just wasted money. Like, there must be part of us, or some of us, that are like, oh, did I waste money on this book? Or I bought all this. How many times have I played this army? Twice.
Oh, okay.
Was it worth it?
Yeah, I don't think so at all. Guy in the chat has made an interesting point. He works in the game industry. Sometimes when we release a bad update or a new unbalanced boost in one of our games, our community managers are getting death threats over the weekend from angry players on our Discord channel. And we always tell them not to take it personally, and they know they are saying something I think is really smart to us. It's okay, they are scared and worried that they're ruining the game they like and that their friends will stop playing with them, and they are like the community. So, like, I think what Guy's pointing out is that, like, the updates are something that, like, we all feel very passionate about. Like, and in some ways, when they copy and paste it, then it's hard to be really wrong or fuck anything up at all, because, like, it's just the same as it was. Like, if anything, it does the crime of being boring, which I think is quite funny, which I quite like. So Joe says, I want the Disciples of Tzeentch Battletome to be 300 pages of the coolest fucking Tzeentch lore I've ever read, with pictures and stories and runes and spells that I can write on parchments to stick on my Tzeentch stuff. I think that that's super fair, and all of the rules to be free online. I agree. Dan, you got any final thoughts, you reckon?
No, nothing that I haven't already said, but I'd just say that I don't want to lose any of the things that we have. That experience of reading a new battle tome for the first time for an army you don't know is a spectacular experience. The problem is the diminishing return on it, and I think that's the thing that for me has been reflected on the strongest here.
And again, I'd like it to be super clear. I love the game. I would desperately love just them to make it more awesome. And I feel like they make the money to make it more awesome. In fact, they quite regularly demand money off me. They're like, would you like to play in the new season? Here is £30 you must give me. And I'm like, okay, then make it really cool. Same with the Battletomes. And if they're not, don't give them your money. Buy some cool minis instead, because it's just as valid and you'll have more fun. That's what I reckon. Anyway, lovely, really great chat. James, great points about WoW. I'm going to be thinking about that all night, I think. So I super appreciate that.
But still sleep.
You still sleep. Well as I do, which is badly. Dan, a super pleasure because you had some salient points and I appreciate you. Good luck on your trip to Australia. Have fun. James, loads of love at Lord of the Rings at the weekend. I wish they brought out some new Lord of the Rings books. What is that Tolkien been doing? Lazy shit.
Dunno. What a lazy bugger.
What a lazy bugger. Chat. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. I think this has been super fun, and I've really, really enjoyed it. And then, loads of love. Thanks for tuning in. And if you have liked the show, please do support us on Patreon, etc., etc. Loads of love, and talk to you soon.